Chapter 135. Inside the tent. Cough, cough, cough. The shipwright was lying on the straw bed. His face was flushed, his breath was weak, his skin was swollen. Everything he saw was a blur. "I'm sorry, sirs, I've caused you trouble," the shipwright said weakly. "Rest well, don't think too much. I'm here, I won't give up on anyone." Jinjin tried to comfort the shipwright. After that, he left the tent with ZD and the others. "How is it?" Heywan immediately asked. "The shipwright can't be lost. What illness did he have?" ZD shook her head and sighed. "How many times have I told you I'm just a pharmacist specializing in perfumes, not a doctor. I can't find the cause of the illness. It shouldn't be poison, nor is it magic corrosion. It's just an illness. If it was a normal case, I would have some confidence. But this illness is most likely related to the environment here. I don't know where to start." Zongu said in a low voice. "The shipwright isn't the only one with this illness. There are a few others. I suspect it's an infectious disease." Everyone's expression changed. Infectious disease. Zhang Jin's expression was heavy, secretly sighing. It had been more than 10 days since they entered the forest, and he was once again in a predicament. And this time, the predicament was no longer the ferocious magic beasts, nor the lack of food and water, but the attack of the disease. These sick people, although the severity of their symptoms are different, but they are all very similar. "Should we give up on these people?" Sandao asked Xinjin. "Give up?" Heywan shook his head. "Without the shipwright, how can we build the ship?" Zongu sighed. "We can't let the disease spread to more people. If necessary, we can only—" He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone's heart trembled. Zongji's actions were full of military style, cold and efficient. Zhang Jin shook his head. "Don't give up on anyone so easily. Let's see what happens next. The shipwright is important, but the others also have the right to live. They're all our companions. Temple knights, sometimes being too benevolent and indecisive will lead to greater losses." Zongu stared into Zhang Jin's eyes, his attitude as resolute as ever. Jinjin looked up at the half-orc without hesitation. "Of course, I understand that. But the situation has just happened. It's far from a time to make a cruel decision, right?" Zongu did not refute. He turned and left. The two of them parted on bad terms, which made the atmosphere of the team even more solemn. Over the next few days, the disease spread through the team, and more people were found to have the same disease. "I'm too lacking in tools," Zidi complained to Jinjin. "I can't use magic, and the methods and skills of making potions are very loud. Right now, I can only concoct some simple herbs to alleviate their pain." ZD had no other way. Zongu went to Jinjin again and repeated his previous suggestion. At the same time, he brought Song Su with him. Song Su was also a very rational person. This time, he stood on Zongji's side. He told Jinjin that many places were infected with the plague and did not have enough doctors and priests. Then the local nobles would lead the knights to kill the infected people and burn them to stop the spread of the disease. If the plague was stopped, the nobles and knights who slaughtered the civilians and the sick would be rewarded by the empire's upper echelons and the major temples. "It's not time yet." Jinjin rejected the two's suggestion again. "So far, no one has died of the disease. And haven't you noticed? The people who are sick are all ordinary people. As long as it's extraordinaire, there is no disaster or disease. Maybe it's because of the sudden change in temperature and environment, psychological pressure and fatigue." Zhenjin shortened the journey of the team. Every day, before evening, they would set up camp and rest. He gathered the infected people together and tried to isolate them from the others. He would visit these patients every day. "Sir, please don't give up on us. I still want to live." "Sir, will I die?" "Master Jinjun, you really deserve to be a Templar Knight. If I die, can you please give these coins to my wife and children?" Zhenjin could only try to comfort these people with words. "Don't panic. These are all small problems. You must believe in yourself. You must believe in me even more. I'm not just a Temple Knight. I'm also a Knight of God. You must understand that the Shengming Emperor might be watching over here." Jinjin still maintained the habit of patrolling at night. Every night, He would do his best to eliminate the nearby herds of beasts. It was good to add a little bit of safety to the team. However, the patients were getting weaker and weaker. Jinjin also felt his own weakness again. The hardcore has no effect on gold-level life forms. No matter how much I can mutate, I can't cure others. What should I do? Is what I'm doing the right thing? The patients longed to see Jinjin every day, although they also understood that Jinjin couldn't cure them, and Jinjin said that God's favor couldn't be bestowed upon them. Every time they saw Jinjin, their hearts would be at ease. This proved that Jinjin didn't give up on them. Zhonggu, Songsu, Heiwan, and the others' attitudes became stronger and stronger. More and more people stood on their side. There was a view that Jinjin is too young and too kind that was privately agreed by more people. This situation became more and more intense. Jinjin began to worry that Zhonggu would secretly act on his own, just like how he privately ordered more half-elves to act as scouts to expand the scope of investigation. ZD still supported Jinjin as always. From Jinjin's awakening until now, ZD's attitude had always been like this. Only this time, she used a tactful tone to persuade Jinjin. Try not to visit these patients. It would be terrible if you got infected. Lan Zhao especially supported ZD's advice. He repeatedly asked Jinjin to let him replace Jinjin to visit the patients. But how could this be? Jinjin knew the fear of these patients. Lan Zhao definitely couldn't replace Jinjin. The team wasn't big, but the people's hearts were different. The pressure from all sides was transmitted to Jinjin's heart. Of course, this included Jinjin's doubts about himself. Perhaps Zhonggu and the other suggestion was wise. Was it right or wrong for me to make such a decision? Would it drag the whole team into the abyss of eternal damnation? There was no way to answer this question, because he wasn't a prophet and he didn't have rich life experience. When people judged right or wrong, they often made deductions based on the results. But once the results were out, it was already too late. Jinjin felt his own loneliness. This was the taste of being a leader. Behind the glory, there was naturally hardship. Every day became longer, especially when they heard the constant coughing coming from the quarantine area. It was even more unbearable. Jinjin still withstood the pressure from all sides. After more than a week, the situation began to improve. The patients' conditions began to lessen, and their bodies were slowly recovering. Another week passed. Most of the patients were obviously recovering, which proved that Jinjin's strategy was effective. Zhonggu, Songsu, and the others no longer expressed their previous suggestions. The team members also no longer privately discussed that Knight Jinjin is too kind, but praised him for his wisdom. As expected of a knight of God, when the team passed through the forest and arrived at the beach, they couldn't help but cheer when they saw the open sea. At this time, the shipwright's condition also improved a lot. Under his strong request, he was supported by others and walked to the beach. Looking at the undulating waves, he silently shed tears. Jinjin was suffering, and the shipwright and the other patients were even more so. In the past, their hearts were filled with fear of death. At this time, the team still hadn't reached their destination. Jinjin and the others still needed to go north along the beach to find the first camp and meet up with the survivors. Only the last part of the journey left, and we can meet up with them. Jinjin encouraged everyone. Everyone still looked at the young knight with admiration and respect, but compared to before, there seemed to be some new changes. The journey suddenly became easier, because they didn't need to cut down vines, cut a path, and didn't need to pull wooden carts, and didn't need to frequently move supplies. Compared to the rainforest, although there were reefs on the beach, it was much more spacious, and the overall terrain was very flat. The team's morale steadily rose because of this. One day, Bai excitedly ran back to the team. As a scout, he held a small wooden barrel in his arms. "Hey, look what I found on the beach." Bai's voice quickly attracted a large group of people. "This must be the goods from the pig's kiss. Guess, what good things will there be? Quickly open it, I can't wait." Everyone opened the small wooden barrel and found more than 10 bottles of rum inside. Thus, the team once again burst into cheers. After receiving the news, Jinjin smiled, and announced that there would be a bonfire banquet that night. The banquet was very simple, and the food and water were limited. Everyone sat around the bonfire, but they were very excited. Jinjin specially asked Baya to pour the wine. Most of the rum was stored as supplies, and only a few bottles were used. When Baya walked in front of a team member, the team member immediately held a shell in his hand and stared at the bottle in Baya's hand. The rum quickly filled the shallow shell, but the team member was still not satisfied. Pour more, pour more. Get lost. It's my turn next. The team member beside him urged loudly. In the end, everyone only had a pitiful little sip of rum, but under the light of the fire, every face was filled with a happy smile. Sometimes, happiness was just that simple. At the edge of the team, Jinjin sat on a reef, looking around. He saw many people in ragged clothes, with unshaven beards, and looked like savages. He saw Baya's serious face as he divided the wine, saw Fat Tongue lowering his head to sip the wine on the edge of the shell, saw Zdi's torn magic robe, and saw Tsang Su wiping his eyes. After passing through the forest, only one lens of his glasses was left, and the other side was an empty frame. Mu Ban held an empty wine bottle, his fingers affectionately stroking the surface. This was the feeling of human civilization. Zhongge and Sandow whispered with their heads down. The big guy squatted on the ground, quietly listening to the shipwright song. Lan Zhao still stood loyally behind Jinjin on the beach. Heiwan gave the wine in his shell to the people beside him. He looked to the west, where was the Shengming continent, where was home. Jinjin looked at the night sky. The sky was filled with stars. The waves rose and fell, and the sound of crashing waves. The salty smell of the sea assaulted his nostrils. He looked to the east, where was the wilderness continent, where was White Sand City, where was his responsibility and future hope. Chapter 136. Dark clouds covered the entire sky, and huge waves came crashing down from the sea, crashing into the reefs and setting off soul-stirring waves. The heavy rain poured down, and the field of vision was dark and gloomy. Visibility was very low. 50 steps away, the sky and earth seemed to merge into one. Jinjin's team did not move forward in the rain. Instead, they left the beach and hid in the nearby rainforest. Jinjin and Zhongge were not afraid of this kind of rain. However, most of the people in the team were ordinary people. Even the bronze-level people like Lan Zhao and Shi Suo were far from having a qualitative change in their physical fitness. For them, it was very dangerous to move forward in the heavy rain while dragging so many heavy supplies. It was easy to fall sick if they were to exercise strenuously and get soaked. Having just experienced the test of illness, Jinjin and the others certainly did not want to take the initiative to look for trouble. At this time, the rainforest became a natural shelter for everyone. The lush foliage and dense vegetation made it easy for everyone to find a place to hide from the rain. Together with the tents, it could even form a completely dry and warm place. Listening to the loud sound of the rain outside the tent, Jinjin was silent. He constantly released ultrasonic waves to explore everything around him. He found that although the ultrasonic waves could not penetrate the rain, they could be reflected very well. However, in a heavy rain, the dense raindrops and the pervasive water vapor would greatly reduce the detection range of the ultrasonic waves. At the same time, the detection results would be more vague. Even so, the ultrasonic waves still covered the entire campsite. Jinjin would be the first to detect any unexpected situation. According to the ultrasonic waves, except for the people in charge of guarding the campsite, the rest of the people were huddled in the tents. There were no negative emotions, such as irritation. Everyone is calm now. The cheap dinner party with more than a dozen bottles of rum played a huge role. Let's wait for the rain to stop. Jinjin was looking forward to it. However, this anticipation lasted for a few days. The heavy rain continued, and everyone gradually became irritable. However, every time Jinjin appeared in front of them, Jinjin did not need to say anything. Everyone's irritation and worry would be greatly reduced. Jinjin's prestige was deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. The food was being consumed rapidly, but the water reserves were at their limit. The most irritated was the shipwright. He reported to Jean alone. "The situation has become troublesome, my lord. If the rain doesn't stop, we'll have to build a dock. This is not a small project. I'm worried that we won't have enough wood for the ship. Even if we build a dock and use wood from the rainforest, it will still take a lot of manpower." In the original plan, there were many parts that could be manufactured outside. But now, if the rain didn't stop, all the work had to be done in the dock. This way, our docks will have to be expanded many times over. Jean could only comfort the shipwright. "You are the most professional among us when it comes to building ships. I don't have any good ideas, but even if we build a dock, it will only take a bit more time and effort, right? As long as we can successfully build a ship and leave this place, everything will be worth it. Don't you think so?" The shipwright stared blankly for a moment, but was immediately convinced. "Sir, you have perseverance and patience that ordinary people cannot hope to achieve. Hearing you say that, I feel much better." The rain finally lessened. Sometimes it was heavy rain, sometimes it was light rain, sometimes the sky was overcast, and the sea breeze carried a bone-piercing chill. When it wasn't raining, or when it was only drizzling, the group moved forward. When the rain became heavier, it stopped. "This damned rain," Haywan cursed. "If it wasn't for the rain, they should have reached the first camp by now. You must protect the wood well, especially the wood used to make the keel." Shipwright Old Four was very worried about this, and had been paying close attention. When night fell, ZD secretly came to Jean's tent alone. "Sir, this is a medicine that I made. It uses a type of poisonous mushroom as the main ingredient. The medicine is slightly poisonous, but it can raise the mind, especially to dispel the cold and increase the taste." This was a very useful gadget. Jean's eyes lit up when he heard this. "Can you make more? Can you promote it to everyone?" ZD shook her head. "Only people with strong bodies can ignore this poison. They have to be at least black iron rank." "Thank you, ZD," Jean said gently. ZD replied with a sweet smile. The rain became less and less heavy, and the duration of the drizzle increased. Sometimes it wouldn't stop for an entire day. The group moved forward under the continuous drizzle. "It's strange," Shisua said to Jean. "According to the season, it hasn't reached the rainy season yet, but we've been having rainy days for more than a week." Song Su gave a guess. "Maybe the weather on the island isn't natural. The master of the island might be controlling the weather here. That's why there are so many different landforms on the island. These landforms all have different climates, and only after a long time can the landforms remain unchanged." ZD had a new question. "Then why did the rainforest climate suddenly change? Does it mean that the master of the island's method of controlling the weather on the island is losing its effect?" Song Su shook his head. "I'm not sure. We haven't been on the island for long. It's normal for the rainforest to have such rain. But if the desert, forest, volcano, and other landforms are also having such rain at the same time, then it's not normal." Unfortunately, they had no way of knowing what was happening in the desert, forest, and volcano landforms. Jean's ultrasonic detection couldn't reach that far. That afternoon, the drizzle was still falling. The sky was covered by dark clouds, and the sun couldn't be seen. The half-elf scout in front reported, "I see it. The first camp is right in front." Everyone was stunned and immediately cheered in unison. After trekking for so long, experiencing so many hardships, and risking their lives many times, they finally rushed back to the first camp. Jean wasn't surprised. His ultrasonic detection had already found the first camp. But why is there no one in the camp? Jean's head was solemn. The good news brought back by the scout boosted the group's morale. Everyone's footsteps unconsciously quickened. Jean noticed this and immediately gave the order. The group quickly returned to their original speed. At the same time, Jean also sent a small scout team to communicate with the people in the first camp. Such a cautious and reliable approach won Zhongji's praise. The half-beastman took the initiative to ask to go to the first camp first. Jean agreed and told him to be careful. Zhonggu was actually a little impatient. Back then, in order to catch up with Shi Saw, the shipwright, and the others, he left in a hurry and took a large number of combatants with him. He only left a temporary leader and 8 combatants in the camp. I wonder if the camp is safe? Zhonggu led a few people to the first camp. No one came to welcome them, not even the guards. The silent camp made Zhonggu feel that something was wrong. He cautiously entered to investigate. After a while, he led the small scout team out in one piece. His furrowed brows slightly relaxed. After meeting up with the main group, Zhonggu handed the letter that was specially left in the camp to Zhenjin. Zhenjin read it and understood the whole story. It turned out that since a long time ago, there had been incidents of mysterious beasts attacking and killing people in the first camp. Zhonggu even personally patrolled around the camp at night. At that time, he stopped the frequent killings. But after Zhonggu chased after Xiang Yi's group, the killings happened again and became more frequent. Everyone in the first camp was in a state of panic. No one could find a murderer, and no one could protect everyone's lives. The situation developed to the point where people died almost every day. Even the temporary leader left behind by Zhonggu was killed. Everyone broke down and thought that the first camp had become a cursed place. An invisible devil took the lives of their companions. Everyone left the first camp. They found a small valley in the nearby rainforest. The last person to leave was worried that Zhonggu or the first exploration team would return, so he left a letter indicating the exact location of the small valley. Understanding the situation, Zhenjin was relieved. He immediately ordered the team to continue forward and turn towards the small valley. In the small valley, everyone gathered together in a panic. It's gone. Someone disappeared again. It's here. It's here. The devil did not stay in the first camp. It followed us. It will not rest until it kills us all. Everyone shouted loudly, and the panic spread out, making people feel even more uneasy and fearful. The group was leaderless. The temporary leader was dead. The situation of mysterious beasts attacking and killing people became even more terrifying. Previously, there were still corpses left, but now even the corpses were gone. I don't think it's a devil. It's a magical beast. It came out from underground. Every time it mysteriously disappeared, there would be a hole at the scene. Usually it's a hole in the ground. Sometimes it's a hole in the mountain wall. There are also cases where it's near the water. We can't see the hole, but I think it's very likely that the hole is covered by the river or vegetation. A clear female voice was heard. Everyone was stunned. Countless gazes focused on the voice. It was Bird Fan who spoke. She was wearing a dark green dress. Her black hair reached her waist. She had delicate features, but her eyes were blue. Her chest was round, and her figure was hot. She looked like a mix of Eastern and Western people in the Empire. Being stared at by so many people at once, Bird Fan was a bit nervous. However, she continued, "We have to unite and fight back. Otherwise, we will be defeated by the mysterious, underground, magical beast one by one." Bird Fan's analysis was reasonable. She had revealed a corner of the mysterious mask of the murderer. However, everyone was hesitant about her suggestion to fight back. Can we deal with it? Is it really a magical beast? Many people are dead. Even the temporary leader is dead. What will we do? Shi Suo and the others ran away. They are scared. Zhonggu and the others might be the same. They said that they went to chase after Shi Suo and the others. What's the truth? I think that fighting back is suicide. It's better to split up and run. Shi Suo and Zhonggu did that. T. Suddenly, a loud voice exploded. A half-orc wearing a full set of stainless steel armor with only his left arm missing walked out of the bushes and appeared in front of everyone. It was Zhonggu. Everyone was shocked and then overjoyed. "Zhonggu, it's Zhonggu. You're finally back. Oh my God, am I hallucinating?" Everyone rushed to Zhonggu, but Zhonggu took half a step back and opened a path. At this time, a young knight slowly walked out. Chapter 137. Everyone's eyes were focused on Zhenjin. Everyone's eyes were filled with curiosity, doubt, and other emotions. Zhenjin's skin was as white as snow. and he had a head of golden hair. He was very handsome. Judging from his appearance, it was obvious that he was not old, about 15 or 16 years old, but no one looked down on him. Although Zhen Jin's leather armor was crudely made, it was obviously made from the skin of a magical beast. Those with good eyesight even noticed the thin sword at needlepoint's waist. Just from a scabbard, they knew that the thin sword was not an ordinary item. Zhen Jin pursed his lips tightly, looking very dignified. The various adventures and energy on the island made him exude a calm, steady, determined, powerful, and other unique temperament, which did not match his youthful appearance. More importantly, he was walking in front, with a group of people clustered behind him. Following closely behind was Lan Zhao with his head held high, the beastman Zhonggu with his steel armor, ZD in her magic robe, the leader of the crew, she saw, and the big guy with the giant bloodline. The hardships of the past made these people show a different mental outlook from ordinary people, like the dark and glossy reefs on the beach after being hit by the waves. At a glance, this group of people looked like elites. Zhen Jin was surrounded by this group of people, obviously the leader, so he must be even more extraordinary. Zhen Jin did not need to say a word, and everyone subconsciously made way for him. This was an open space in a valley. In the middle of the open space were stair-like stones, forming a natural high platform. Under everyone's gaze, Zhen Jin climbed up the stone stairs step by step and stood at the highest point. His hand stroked the hilt of the sword at his waist, and he looked down at everyone with a calm gaze. Following closely behind him were Tsang Su, ZD, Zhonggu, Lan Zhao, and the others, all standing on the lower stone stairs. Everyone was silent. Only the sound of footsteps and the sound of clothes and armor rubbing against each other could be heard. When Zhen Jin's people stood still, the empty space fell into a state of silence. Lan Zhao stood on the secondary stone steps and announced loudly, "All of you must listen carefully. The person standing before you right now is my master, Lord Zhen Jin. He is the only heir of the Hundred Needles clan, a noble divine knight of the Holy Temple, and the future lord of White Sand City. Nobles, city lords, holy knights, and divine knights." Each and every word was like a bomb that was thrown into the hearts of the crowd, setting off huge waves. Even without Lan Zhao's order, everyone bowed their heads and curtsied to Zhen Jin. Generally speaking, other than slaves to their masters, very few people would kneel on both knees in daily life. When the commoners met the aristocrats, and the lower aristocrats met the upper aristocrats, they would all curtsy. When saluting, the saluter had to lower his head and bend his waist. According to the difference in status between the two parties, the degree of bowing was different. If one did not lower their head and bend their waist enough, they could be punished. At this moment, almost everyone had their heads deeply bowed, and their waists were also greatly bowed. Everyone's expression was very rich: shock, joy, and doubt. There was actually such a great person hidden on the same ship. Zhen Jin looked around and keenly discovered that many people were secretly glancing at him. This kind of behavior was not proper. But Zhen Jin was not surprised. What kind of people would take the initiative to go to the wild continent, where war was bound to break out? Most of them were speculators, criminals, ambitious people, and so on. Although their gazes were not proper, no one questioned Zhen Jin's identity or showed an expression of dissatisfaction. They were originally the weakest, and their battle strength was low. Although they had a large number of people, they were essentially a motley crew. Seeing everyone salute him, Zhen Jin finally opened his mouth slowly, his clear voice echoing in the open space. Whether it is the mountains, the seas, the swamps, or even the islands, my lord's holy light shines on everything. The Empire's military flag will always flutter in the wind, standing tall. Nothing can stop me from moving forward. I will obtain glory, and if you follow me, glory will also belong to you. From now on, I will be in charge here. Does anyone have any objections? The whole place was silent. Zhen Jin nodded with satisfaction. Many people, including ZD, had a slightly different expression. At this moment, The young knight showed a domineering and majestic aura that had never been seen before. Zhongge was expressionless. He had a big-picture view and knew that the whole team needed a voice. It would be best if there was only one voice. This way, he could fully mobilize everyone and react more quickly. Zhongge still had a lot of trust in Zhen Jin's ability. Next, Zhen Jin began to redistribute the living quarters. There were caves of different sizes in this valley. They were not excavated by the brown monkey-tail bear, but formed naturally. Many people who originally lived there were driven out. The most spacious and brightest cave was, of course, reserved for Zhen Jin. In addition, the caves with better environments were assigned by Zhen Jin to Zd, Song Su, Shi Suo, Zhongge, and the others. The people who were driven out were naturally unhappy, but no one openly protested from beginning to end. Because in everyone's opinion, such an arrangement was reasonable. People with high status and strength should enjoy better treatment. The value of respecting the strong and despising the weak had always been prevalent in every race. The public warehouse where the materials were stored immediately fell into the control of Jin Jun. Zhen Jin began to command the people in the valley to move the supplies he brought to the public warehouse. The people who followed Zhen Jin were all resting. The people in the valley were far more energetic than them. This group of people is living quite comfortably. If they had tasted the hardships we suffered, I'm afraid they would cry for their parents. Although there was a mysterious assassin, most of them should have survived. If they want to follow us, they'll probably lose their lives halfway there. Hey, be careful. These logs have to be handled gently. Don't damage them. It wasn't easy for us to move them back. Looking at these people working, the returning members generally felt a sense of superiority. The people who were working saw that the people around them were openly resting and even yelling at them. Although they had some complaints, they did not open their mouths to complain. Did you see that? The powerful Zhongge is bowing down to Lord Zhen Jin. And Shi Suo, this group of people is also back. We have a shipwright again. Looks like there's really hope for us to leave this damn place. They moved so much wood, I'm afraid they're going to build a new ship. There's no need to go through so much trouble, right? Lord Zhen Jin is a big shot. Maybe his family's reinforcements will come to the island tomorrow. No one felt humiliated because they were commanded by Zhen Jin. They were very excited and felt honored. Zhen Jin's status was noble. They had never been so close to such a big shot before. There was a lot of noise in the valley. Jean Pin's cave residents welcomed a beauty. Bird Fan. She bowed to Zhen Jin, bending her waist, showing the white of her chest. Although she was voluptuous, the chest of her dress was very high and did not reveal any of her breasts. The Empire's Eastern customs were relatively traditional. Coupled with Bird Fan's oriental features, it showed a unique charm. No wonder the first mate wanted to take her. She was indeed a rare beauty. In terms of appearance, she was only slightly inferior to ZD. After the curtsy, Bird Fan straightened up. A pair of beautiful eyes looked at Zhen Jin closely, her gaze full of curiosity. She had some understanding of Zhongge. She knew that this half-beast man's pride was hidden in his heart. To be able to make this half-beast man submit, the young man in front of her was definitely not a simple person. Naturally, Sparrow Fan came here because of Jean Jin's summons. Tell me what you've observed about the mysterious magical beast and the cave entrance. Zhen Jin said, Yes, Lord Zhen Jin, I will definitely know everything. Bird Fan's information was just like that, on the surface. After Zhen Jin heard it, he let her leave in disappointment. Sitting on the stone that served as a low stool, Zhen Jin fell into deep thought. Taking over the group of people in the valley was very smooth. There were no problems. This was all within Zhen Jin's expectations. Because Zhen Jin was the strongest of them all, his status was high enough that he naturally occupied the position of leader. He was not alone. He had a group of subordinates who followed him closely. These people's fighting strength was also far superior to the people in the valley. In addition, in a state of survival, relying on the strong to increase their chances of survival was very easy for Zhen Jin to take over the people in the valley. It was just that there were a lot of people. Zhang Jin's gaze swept over them just now, and he estimated that there were at least 200 people. With so many people, Zhang Jin's leadership style had to change. He wanted to display the dignity of a noble. When he was expressionless or stern, he was silently reminding everyone that he was a leader, a superior person. At the same time, he also wanted to establish the status of his subordinates, making his subordinates slightly higher than the people in the valley. This way, his subordinates would support him more and ensure his authority. This was one of the reasons why he ordered his subordinates to rest and let the people in the valley work. Shi Suo and the other crew members have been disliked by the people in the valley because of their previous escape. The half-beast man Zhonggu, Sandao, and the others are also very embarrassed because of their racial identity. This is a good thing. From the perspective of a superior, Zhang Jin naturally looked at things from a different perspective than normal people. The most important thing now is to find the mysterious murderer who killed the survivors. Chapter 138. Compared to the forest terrain, the rainforest terrain was flat and there were few mountains. This valley was not large. It was small enough to accommodate more than 200 people and a large amount of supplies. The small valley was shaded by trees. A large amount of vegetation, bushes, and vines were close to each other, layer upon layer. Except for the small open space in the center, the rest of the place was covered by lush green leaves and branches. Inside the small valley, there were large and small natural caves, deep and shallow. These were natural residences. There was also a pool of spring water in the valley. This stable source of fresh water was extremely valuable. This was also the main reason why the people of the first camp chose to move here. It was a pity that the mysterious murderer had followed closely behind. After moving here, more than a dozen people had mysteriously disappeared in the valley. They must have met with misfortune. After resting for a night and clearing most of the fatigue in their bodies, Zhang Jin, Song Su, and the others came to a cave. This cave was not deep. It was one of the crime scenes. The people who used to live here had mysteriously disappeared. The cave was obvious at a glance. After people disappeared here, no one dared to live here again. There were some simple daily necessities in the cave. They emitted a faint moldy smell and a faint smell of blood. The most attractive thing was a huge rock in the middle. Under the huge rock was a cave entrance. Zhang Jin signaled with his eyes. Lan Zhao understood and took the initiative to move the huge rock away. This pair of master and servant met in the forest. After that, they experienced sandstorms, deserts, volcanoes, oases. The exploration along the way had created a tacit understanding between them. After the huge rock was moved away, the cave below was immediately exposed. The diameter of the cave was about 7 meters. The bottom of the cave was deep and dark. Even if they threw stones or torches, they would not be able to see the bottom, unless someone bent down and went in. But this was extremely dangerous. According to the speculation of Birdfan, the mysterious murderer who had continuously killed people came in and out of this cave. In fact, this idea was very natural. After all, the sudden appearance of the cave was too obvious. But no one could solve this problem. No one wanted to take the risk and go in. This cave was too narrow. If they encountered the mysterious murderer here, it would be suicide. Zhang Jin and the others carefully looked at the cave entrance. Song Su stretched out his skinny old hand and touched the edge of the hole. On the wall of the cave, he felt a wave of grease. ZD took out a bottle of medicine and sprinkled it around the cave. Soon, the colorless potion reacted and emitted a strange, pungent smell. The evidence is conclusive. It should be the giant underground worm, ZD said with certainty. Zhang Jin nodded, and the rest of the people also had an expression of as expected. During the defensive battle of the camp, everyone first discovered this silver-ranked magic beast. It could burrow into the ground, had a huge body, and was full of vitality. It had fought with the Zhonggu a few times and was a huge threat to the camp. In the process of Zhang Jin chasing the blue dog fox wolf, Zhonggu still smashed it to death. Of course, its body would not go to waste. After it was dragged back, It was immediately dissected by Tsang Su. Tsang Su analyzed that this giant underground worm was pieced together from at least 3 different creatures, and its main body was a clamworm. Clamworms were also known as sea earthworms. Under normal circumstances, they were about the same size as earthworms and were mostly found on beaches. Everyone's understanding of the giant underground worm deepened. After Zhonggu and Sandao found out, some people speculated, could it be that this was the magic beast that attacked the survivors in the first camp? The beach was different from other terrains. When the giant underground worm burrowed in and out, the hole would collapse. Plus, when the attack happened, it was raining and the beach was always wet. This made it even more difficult to distinguish the traces. If the magical beast attacked from underground and escaped from underground, then everything made sense. Tsang Su also analyzed. The giant underground worm secreted a greasy body fluid on its body, which made it easier for it to burrow in and out of the underground tunnel. ZD had collected this kind of body fluid and specially concocted a potion. Once the potion came into contact with the fluid, it would react and produce a strange smell. Now, Zhonggu and the other speculations were confirmed. After that, everyone investigated the other tunnels. Tsang Su said in a serious tone, "The giant underground worm grows very fast. You can tell from the diameter of these tunnels. This is very likely the case. The larvae of the giant underground worm were attracted by people's activities under the beach and started to hunt. At that time, it was still young, so it could only hunt. It couldn't drag people into the tunnels or swallow them whole. After that, people started to migrate and gave up on the first camp. The giant underground worm noticed this and followed them underground. It used this valley as its new hunting ground. Because there was an endless supply of food, it grew very fast underground. Its body became bigger, and its strength increased greatly. Now, the giant underground worm has the ability to drag people into the tunnels or eat them whole. Because of this, people were killed on the beach, but mysteriously disappeared in the valley. Tsang Su's analysis was approved by everyone present. ZD added, "We investigated a few tunnels and didn't find any blood stains near the entrances. If people were dragged in by the giant worm, there would be all kinds of traces left behind. So, I'm more inclined to believe that the giant underground worm swallowed people whole. When it attacks, it's always at night. It seems to attack when people are asleep. With such a tactic, it's easier and easier for it to swallow a person alive. Then how should we deal with it?" Zhonggu was worried. The giant worm was active underground, and its population was unknown. It would only come out when it was hunting. The difficulty was that it could accurately sense the activity of life on the ground through its sense of touch. So, it had always been able to avoid the main force and attack the weak points, and find people who were alone. Back on the beach, Zhonggu and the others kept watch at night, but they didn't catch it. They didn't even see its shadow. Deliberately hiding, setting up traps, and then surrounding the giant underground worm with a group of people did not seem to work. "Don't worry, I have a way," Zhenjin said. He had ultrasonic detection, so he could easily know the movements of the giant worm underground. He also had the strange fragrance, so controlling the giant worm wasn't a problem. He could even transform into a spear scorpion and burrow into the tunnels. However, on the surface, Zhenjin looked troubled. "ZD, I hope you can concoct a potion. It's best if you can create a smell that the giant worm likes and attract it up. Since the giant worm likes to hunt down lone targets, Zhonggu and the others, please gather everyone together to rest. As for me, don't disturb me. I need some time alone. I will pray to my Lord." Hearing Zhenjin's last sentence, everyone's eyes lit up. Dark clouds covered the sky above the beach, and the sun couldn't be seen. It was drizzling in the air, and the sea breeze blew, causing Mu Ban to shiver. The pig's kiss. Baya looked at the half of the ship lying on the beach with a complicated expression. His dream of becoming a knight and standing out was refuted and opposed by his hunter father. However, this ignited Baya's rebellious spirit. The young man stole his family's money and barely managed to scrounge up the lowest class ticket to board the pig's kiss. He definitely didn't expect that the pig's kiss, which he carefully selected, would meet with a shipwreck. I'll go in first and investigate. After confirming that it's safe, you can go in and dismantle the ship. Sandow said, if I don't come out, don't go in to save me. The best thing to do is to go back and find Lord Jinjin or Zonga. Muban and Baya nodded at the same time. They all knew that they were weak. If Sandow fell, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they rushed in to save him. Muban, Baya, Sandow, and the others were all sent by Junjin to dismantle the pig's kiss. The pig's kiss's resources had been plundered clean, but the ship's wreckage still had great value. Many of the planks could still be used, and so could the mast. Especially the ship's nails, which were something that Jinjin and the others were currently lacking. Sandow's figure quickly appeared on the upturned deck. He waved to the people under the beach and shouted, "Come up! Everything is safe here." Plank, Baya, and more than 20 people brought hammers, saws, and other tools, and entered in a single file. The pig's kiss had 2 decks, a bow and a poop. Now, only half of the ship was left, and there was no poop. There was a captain's room in the bow. There was also a crew room in the front half, and the goods were usually placed at the bottom. According to the shipwright's instructions, the people first dismantled the mast. The front mast was unusually well preserved, and the middle mast was broken in half. The remaining half was still valuable. After that, they dismantled it from top to bottom and from the outside to the inside. For a moment, the pig's kiss's wreckage was filled with the sound of people shouting, sawing wood, and smashing with hammers. They came here in the morning and rested at noon. They ate the dry food and water they brought with them, and continued to work in the afternoon. There were no attacks from wild beasts, and no unexpected gains. Early on, the survivors had checked the ship's wreckage again and again, and everything that could be used and eaten was taken away. It was very clean. In the evening, when Baya brought people to the captain's room, they made a small discovery. Baya found a small bottle of ink in the corner, a broken feather pen, and a stack of paper in the drawer. Baya was just about to show his joy. Whoosh! A strong wind blew, and the ship's hull shook violently. "Get out quickly! The pig's kiss is about to collapse." Baya heard Muban's roar. The ship's wreckage was already unstable, and after a day of dismantling, only the skeleton was left. It was natural for it to collapse. Baya and the others immediately turned and ran. But just as they reached the door of the captain's room, Baya clenched his teeth, suddenly turned and ran inside. The people beside him didn't stop him, and after hesitating, they ran first. After a dozen breaths, the ship collapsed and dust filled the air. "Where's Baya?" He suddenly turned around and ran inside. He's still inside. After realizing this, everyone hurried back into the smoke. Soon they saw Baya. Baya was lying on the beach, his face covered in dust. Behind him, only half a meter away, was a pile of broken ship's hull. Seeing this, Sandow, Muban, and the others all felt a lingering fear for Baya. But after the young man got up, he smiled fearlessly and innocently. As the night deepened, everyone held torches and dragged a large pile of dismantled supplies back to the small valley. The atmosphere in the small valley was lively. Sandow and Muban asked around and found out that Junjin and the others had found the mysterious culprit and killed it. It was a huge worm, ferocious and terrifying. Everyone was overjoyed. After a day of hard work, the tiredness in their bodies seemed to have been swept away by this news. That night, Junjin and the others held another celebratory dinner. At the edge of the cave, Baya leaned against the wall and sat on the damp ground. He carefully spread out the paper on his thigh, then dipped a quill in ink and started writing under the light of the bonfire outside. "My beloved Miss Shifu, I haven't written to you in a long time. Please forgive me. The shipwreck happened too suddenly, and the difficulties, dangers, and excitement that followed far surpassed anything I've experienced in my life." Baya wrote a lot, but there were many words that he didn't know how to write, so he left them empty for now. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "When we came back, we saw the corpse of a huge worm on a high platform in the empty space of the small valley. This worm was still very young, and it didn't have the size of the huge worm that attacked the camp. The people cheered, playing and cursing around the corpse of the huge worm, venting their emotions. I can imagine the shock in their hearts, as well as their joy, and their worship of the Lord Jinjin. The Lord Jinjin did it. This was completely within my expectations. To him, this was just a small matter. How do you say it in the Eastern Empire? As easy as turning over one's hand? Is this the right word? My life was saved by the Lord Jinjin, and he is a true knight. The gods favor him, and I think it is only natural. If they don't favor someone like him, who else can they favor? I believe that everything will get better and better. As long as we can build a new ship, we can leave this island. I can go to the wilderness to fight and gain glory, because I follow the Lord Jinjin. Chapter 139. Inside the cave, a sketch of the ship was laid out on a long wooden table. Jinjin, ZD, Song-su, Zhonggu, and the others sat around the table. Everyone's eyes were focused on the sketch. The sketch depicted the side view, top view, and perspective view of the ship. The author of the sketch, shipwright Lao Si, introduced, after statistics, there are 247 survivors. We have already dismantled the Pig's Kiss. Counting the wood we transported and estimating how much iron we can produce from our iron ore, I came up with the idea of this ship. The estimated length of the ship is 42 meters, width 16 meters, height 8 meters, displacement 300 tons. As you can see, the new ship will have 2 decks. The top deck will be equipped with 5 cannons. There will be a total of 3 masts, each with a mast. This is a slash mast. The mast and the bow mast will have sails, mainly square sails. According to our sea chart and route, the wind is stable, so square sails are the most practical. But the mast will have a jib sail. To be more precise, it will be a big jib sail. The estimated size of our main sail will be more than 200 square meters. This is the forecastle, mainly for the big guys. This is the poop, where your room is, Master Jinjun. There is a balcony behind the aft. With a wide view, you can enjoy the beautiful scenery of the sea. At the end, shipwright Lao Si gave Jin a flattering smile. The new ship was twice the size of the Pig's Kiss. The Pig's Kiss was 76 meters long. It was a large trading ship, capable of transporting large amounts of goods and people. According to the voyage, this island was located near the midpoint of the straight line between the Shengming continent and the wilderness continent. Jinjin and the others' goal was not to create a good ship, but to leave this island as soon as possible, complete the second half of the voyage, and then rush to the wilderness continent. How much do we need in terms of supplies? Jinjin broke the silence and asked. Shipwright Lao Si replied, mainly nails. We need a lot of iron, so we need a lot of iron. Don't we have enough oars? Jinjin was puzzled. Back then, he had been afraid of this. Many nights, he had transformed into a brown monkey-tail bear and continued to mine. Most of the oars in their hands were excavated by Jinjin alone. ZD replied, we have to thank the brown bears for the oars. We have a sufficient amount of oars. However, in order to extract the iron from the ore, we are currently using the method of dissolving it with chemicals. We don't have enough medicine for this. I see. Jinjin nodded and scanned the crowd. Do you have any ideas on how to solve this problem? ZD revealed a troubled expression. Currently, I'm actively looking for alternative materials, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to find any. After all, this was a rainforest, not a forest. Perhaps we can form an exploration team and head to the forest to collect these raw materials. Song-su shook his head. It's too difficult and risky. The Lord Jinjin needs to guard the valley, and our combat power is not enough to support an exploration team. Using medicine to process ores was not a conventional method. My suggestion is to build an earthen kiln. It's not the small kiln I made in the oasis, but a large one. We can use charcoal to heat it up and melt the ores to obtain large amounts of pig iron. Can we build a large kiln here? Jinjin asked. He remembered that in the oasis, Song-su's attempt to build an earthen kiln had failed. However, Song-su nodded. It's possible. The soil here is different from the oasis. In fact, someone has already made one. He's a craftsman and has much more experience in building an earthen kiln than I do. The proportion of craftsmen among the survivors was very high. These people all went to the wilderness to work. If the humans wanted to gain a foothold in the wilderness and win the war, they would have to build a large number of castles, camps, and other defensive structures. These structures represented a large number of work opportunities, which far exceeded the standard salary in the Shungming continent. Zhenjin nodded. Let's do as Tsang Su suggested. We'll build an earthen kiln. After making the decision, Zhenjin looked at the shipwright. There are other gaps, the shipwright said. Of the remaining gaps, one was the sail. Making a sail required a large amount of cloth. Originally, the shipwright had placed his hopes on the sail of the Pig's Kiss. However, after dismantling it, he only obtained a few fragments of the sail. Because before the temperature dropped, the survivors in the first camp had dismantled and tore off the sail, using it as warm clothing. The other was the adhesive. The ship's planks were connected horizontally, so there were gaps. Under normal circumstances, they were filled with asphalt, hemp rope, glue, and so on. There was also a large gap in the adhesive. The third was the crew. Zhenjin and the others needed to train some temporary sailors. The last was the supplies. The food and water reserves were large, but not enough. Building a ship required a large amount of energy, which led to an increase in the consumption of food. After the ship was built, they needed to store enough supplies. During the voyage, it was difficult to obtain supplies. Some people might say that they could fish on the sea. This was very unprofessional. Fishing was usually done in the fishing grounds. Fishing in other areas was very inefficient. The work on the ship was very heavy. If everyone went fishing, not only would the efficiency be very low, the speed of the ship would also slow down. After a long time, more food would be consumed. It was not worth it. From this point of view, the sea and the desert were not much different. How long will it take to build this new ship? Zhenjin asked the question he was most concerned about. The shipwright replied, Normally, the construction of a ship would take about 2 years. It is hard to estimate the construction time of our new ship, but should take at least half a year. That's too long. Can be shortened? One was also not satisfied with the time. The shipwright sighed. This is already the fastest speed. The main reason is because of Sir ZD's medicine, which can speed up the drying of the wood in the shade. Normally, the wood used to build a ship needs to be dried and completely remove the moisture. Normally, it will be dried in the shade for at least a year. Fortunately, we have a lot of craftsmen. If it were not for the 200 people in the valley, with our previous personnel, even 4 or 5 years might not be enough to build ship. Zhenjin was very disappointed with this answer. After half a year, the position of White Sand City's lord had already been decided. The Empire's officials would not wait for Zhenjin alone. The 2 temple knights who were competing with him for the lord's position would definitely not wait for Zhenjin. But there was no other way, unless help came during this time. If Zhenjin relied on building a new ship to escape, he could only accept this time. The location of the ship was set in the small valley. As long as it was slightly modified, the empty space in the small valley would be a very good place to build a ship. Building a dock was too troublesome. Of course, the materials for the dock did not need to be as high as the building of the ship. The rainforest was not lacking in wood. Heiwan, Sandao, and the others formed a logging team and a patrol team. The wood was continuously imported into the small valley. The location of their logging was mainly concentrated in the small valley and the beach. Clearing the forest here would make it easier to build tracks in the future, which would be beneficial for the new ship to sail smoothly. The amount of work needed to build tracks was much smaller than building a dock directly on the beach. After a few days, the empty space in the small valley was finally isolated from the raindrops. It was a rainstorm, so the ground was also kept dry. Building a ship required a dry environment. The shipwright and the others began to work on the largest tree trunk, which was the best material for making the keel. According to the shipwright and Mu Ban, even in the major ports of the Shungming continent, it was difficult to find such a good material. Under Tsang Su's coordination, the survivors in the valley were busy. Everyone had something to do. Lan Zhao and Baiyu were responsible for building the valley, forming a fortification, and laying traps and warning devices on the periphery. Fat Tongue assisted Song Su, and ZD was responsible for the development of potions. Zhenjin, Zongge, and the others were responsible for clearing out the surrounding herds and replenishing their food reserves. Bird Fan led the women and the injured to make hemp rope and cloth. After making the keel, the shipwright and the others began to make the masts without stopping. Because of the lack of suitable wood, they had to make at least 6 masts, which were pieced together in pairs to form a foremast, a middle mast, and a mizzen mast. At the same time, Fat Tongue led some people to apply the potion on the keel. With the potion, the keel would dry out faster. The amount of potion used on the keel alone almost emptied ZD's inventory. ZD could only separate the potion production process and distribute it to others to increase the production. This required new manpower. Fortunately, Song Su had a wealth of experience and quickly transferred enough people from other areas to avoid slowing down the progress of other projects. With the ultrasonic detection, Zhenjin did not miss any herds near the valley. Every time he took action, he gained a lot. Zongge no longer competed with Zhenjin, and in this aspect, he was second only to Zhenjin. When the shipwright, Mu Ban, and the others began to make the shipboards, with the valley as the center, the area within a radius of 50,000 meters was cleared. But the work of clearing out the herds would still continue. Because the herds were mobile, the empty territory and abundant food sources were a huge temptation to the herds. Clearing out the herds was not as frequent as before, and the danger was sharply reduced. The herds that were attracted were usually weak herds or magical beasts. Powerful magical beasts or herds were the overlords of their own territories and did not need to migrate. Zhenjin gradually handed this job over to Zongge, Hei Wan, and the others. The extra time he earned was used to train the various forms of the Corps in private, and he made a lot of progress. The frequency of the torrential rain became lower, and the sunny days in a week began to outnumber the rainy days. In the evening, the sky cleared up. The light of the setting sun shone on Jinjun and a group of scale-horned black panthers. While Zhenjin was training in private at the edge of the warning line, this group of horned black panthers broke into the range of his ultrasonic detection. Zhenjin gladly accepted the mana reserves that were delivered to his door. After a battle, the battlefield calmed down. It's too easy. As long as I touch the horned black panthers, they'll be electrocuted to death. Zhenjin smiled in satisfaction. After a long period of perseverance and hard training, he had obtained results. He could now discharge electricity freely. I'm different from the silver flying squirrel. The latter's discharge will immediately weaken, but my discharge will increase the consumption of my mana, and it won't affect me much. Who's there? Using ultrasonic again, Zhenjin discovered someone in the distance. Zhenjin's expression changed. When he was fighting just now, he stopped using ultrasonic and focused mainly on discharging electricity, so he did not notice in time. What did this person observe? When did he come here? What did he discover? The scorpion shell on Zhenjin's body was easily connected to what Zongge saw back then. Who was this person? Zhenjin ran wildly and chased after this person. The mysterious person noticed him and turned around to flee into the valley. Chapter 140. Red light gushed out of Zhenjin's body. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a silver bat monkey. Stomping on the ground and flapping his wings, Zhenjin, the bat monkey, flew into the sky. He flew up like a sharp sword. He ran through the trees, sometimes flapping his wings, sometimes using his hands and feet to climb and jump with the help of branches. His movements were wild, and his limbs were extremely coordinated. He was no different from a real bat monkey. This was the result of hard work. Zhenjin was full of anxiety. I have to stop him or her. Who could it be? I was too careless. I shouldn't have transformed during the day. In addition to his anxiety, there was also regret. Originally, Zhenjin always transformed at night. No one would walk in the wild at night because human vision limited the range of human activities. But during the day, even if it was 50,000 meters away from the small valley, there might still be human activities. Jinjin just wanted to practice his beast form more, especially the ability to discharge electricity, which he had just mastered. Like a child who had gotten a new toy, the horned leopards rushing over were the perfect targets for him to practice on. Usually, Jinjin would send out ultrasonic waves to explore the surroundings every once in a while. But just now, when he was fighting with the horned leopards, his mind was used to manipulate the muscles to discharge electricity, and the interval between the ultrasonic waves was extended. This situation was very rare, but at such a critical moment, something really went wrong. The mysterious man was very fast, far faster than ordinary people. But after running at his maximum speed for a while, he was limited by his physical strength and slowed down. The canopy behind him suddenly shook. The mysterious man heard the movement and turned around to check. His face was full of horror. He had dark skin and curly hair. Because of the crazy running, he was sweating and panting. It was Heiwan. After pausing for a few breaths, there was no other movement from the shaking canopy. Heiwan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, turned around, and continued to run. In the dense canopy, a silverbat monkey was hiding. Even with the monkey fur covering his face, Jinjin still couldn't hide his uncertain expression. It's him. It's Heiwan, the mercenaries hired by ZD. Why is he here? No, he should be here. I've gradually handed over the cleanup work to Zhonggu and him. He's a bronze-ranked Dochi practitioner, so it's not strange for him to appear here. But wait, why is he alone? Where are the other patrol members? What did he see? For a time, Jinjin watched as Heiwan fled. The latter's figure disappeared into the rainforest and quickly disappeared from his sight. Jinjin was very confused. He was also flustered. What should I do now? He had been too anxious just now, so he didn't think too much about it and immediately gave chase. He really wanted to find out who had seen him. Just now, he got his answer. Then, he fell into a state of bewilderment. He didn't know what to do next. A thought kept expanding in the young man's mind. Kill him. I can totally kill him. He's just a bronze-ranked warrior. The difference in strength between us is huge. If I kill him, no one will know that it was me who killed him. It's very normal. He was alone in the rainforest and encountered a ferocious magical beast. He was killed by the magical beast. This reason is very good. It's very natural, isn't it? I'll disguise the traces of battle. I'm already very skilled in this aspect. Sangsu and Zhonggu will be fooled by you, just like before. The thought of killing Heiwan became stronger and stronger. No, I can't. Jinjin subconsciously used force, his fingers digging into the bark. I'm a Knight Templar, not a murderer. I uphold benevolence and justice. How can I reap a life for my own selfishness and a conjecture? Heiwan is definitely not my enemy. In fact, he helped me a lot. He lent me the rapier silver lightning. It's his family heirloom. The malicious thoughts were suppressed by Jin's efforts, but very quickly, with an even stronger force, it bounced back, hitting Jin's bottom line, fiercely shaking his heart. Come on, Jin, don't be bound by morals. Wasn't the lesson from Spear Scorpion enough? Have you forgotten? How long has it been? Have you already forgotten? Spear Scorpion almost took your life, you shouted in your heart. I want to live. Other people's creed, family teachings, those are other people's. What depravity is at hand? The abyss is at your feet. Bullshit. Yes, I want to live. I want to live with my head held high. I want to revive the 100 Needles family. I want to become the White Sand City's lord. I don't want to be doubted, questioned, hated, and spat on by others. You're a Knight Templar. You're not a monster. If your secret is discovered, what will they think of you? What will your end be? Although Jin's hands were on the tree trunk, at this moment, his body was almost on the verge of collapse. His conscience was screaming in his heart. No, they will understand, as long as I explain clearly enough. From the beginning to the end, I've saved many lives, I've sacrificed so much for this team. They will be grateful, they will understand me, forgive me, and accept me. Ha ha ha. There seemed to be another Jinjin. mocking him in his heart. Wake up, Jinjin. Don't have any unrealistic fantasies. If you let Heiwan go, it means that the secret will be completely exposed, and the good situation will be completely ruined. What will people think of you? A knight blessed by God? No, he's just a monster, a devil in human skin. Think about Zhongge. He's a half-beastman, but he still has human blood in him. He has such powerful combat strength, but he's still despised and hated. What about you? You're not even a half-beastman. You're just a monster. Kill him. Kill him. Zhun Jin's breathing became heavy. He continued to run through the thicket, chasing after Heiwan again. But at the same time, his heart was in a struggle. No, I'm not a monster. I'm Jinjin. I'm a holy knight. Just because of some doubts I'll kill. Then I'll really be a monster. No matter what the outside looks like, my heart is a bright red human heart. If I kill Heiwan, what's the difference between me and those magical beasts? Then why are you chasing? The other Zhun Jin, in his heart, with just one sentence, made Zhun Jin unable to refute. The youth's mouth was extremely dry. At this moment, he felt that he couldn't control himself. His body was moving on its own, but his mind was in a mess that he had never experienced before. The Zhun Jin, in his heart, shouted again, Heiwan, he's not your enemy now, but soon he will be. He'll ruin everything. Once your secret is discovered, people will doubt you and no longer trust you. People will split, confront each other, and then internal friction. Zhonggu is full of ambition. He won't let go of this opportunity. What about ZD? Think about your poor fiancée. She'll always follow you, support you. Do you want your fiancée to worry? Put her in danger? Zhun Jin, you must be a holy knight. You must be a holy knight. Only in this way can you lead these people, make them unite as one, and twist everyone's strength into a rope. The ship is already being built. The beast horde is no longer a threat. Food and water are being stored. No one knows how much effort you've put into this situation, how much effort you've put in, how many times you've risked your life. Just because of Heiwan's words, because of a secret, you want to ruin everything? Kill him. Kill him. Zhun Jin's face alternated between ferocious and sorrowful. He felt like he was falling into the abyss, and his conscience was getting weaker and weaker. No, this is a living person. He's my comrade. Zhun Jin weakly shouted in his heart. But that voice immediately refuted Zhun Jin. Comrade? This is a threat to the big picture. He's like a piece of rat shit. You can't let him spoil the pot of soup. You don't owe him anything. You're his savior. Have you forgotten? Without you, he would have died a long time ago. Died under the claws of the black steel-bat monkeys. Yes, he did lend you the rapier silver lightning. This sword has been of great help to you. But if he died back then, who would this sword belong to? Kill him. Don't hesitate anymore. Just treat it as if you were a step too late and didn't save his life. This isn't just for you, it's for the big picture. Song Su said it before. In fact, you already understood it, didn't you? Those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. Those who succeed may have a despicable past, but these will be covered by the light and victory. Most people didn't care how they succeeded. They only cared about the result, whether you succeeded or failed. Think about it. When you save these people and lead them to escape from this damned island, you'll be a hero. You'll be the savior of more than 200 people. It's just one less Heiwan. What's the big deal? You're a holy knight. You'll be praised. You'll struggle endlessly. Always be optimistic. Never give up. You'll become a role model. You can't be a monster. Once this secret is exposed, even if you save these people, what will you get? You won't even be able to lead these people. You'll most likely fail to escape from here. For more than 200 people, the only one sacrificed is Heiwan. He's very suspicious. Very suspicious. Why did he come to the wilderness alone and discover your secret? He must be harboring evil intentions towards you. That must be it. Countless blood vessels filled Zhun Jin's eyes. A murderous intent brewed in his heart, growing rapidly. He caught up with Heiwan again, looking down at Heiwan's head and back from above. Look at him, he's so weak. Now, as long as you pounce down, you can easily kill him. Actually, you have many ways to take his life. A mouthful of acid could make him unrecognizable. The thin tip of the spear scorpion could directly penetrate his head. Could his bones be harder than a monkey-tail brown bear? A bronze-ranked human? He's as brittle as a piece of paper. Kill him, quickly kill him. Zhun Jin's breathing became more rapid, his murderous intent growing stronger. Who's there? At this moment, there were shouts from the front. Zhun Jin's head trembled. He quickly stopped and hid behind the trunk of a big tree. It's me, Hei Wan shouted. The person who shouted immediately relaxed. There were more than 10 of them. After seeing Hei Wan, they all greeted him, sir. Hei Wan nodded. I followed the strange sound and explored a long distance, but I didn't find anything. Let's go, we'll go back to the camp now. But it's still early. Someone objected. It's about time. We're already very far from the camp. If we rush back, we can have a hot meal. Hei Wan shook his head and continued. Don't worry, we've already explored this place. If there's a herd of beasts, there will definitely be traps that will alert us. Seeing Hei Wan's attitude, the others did not insist. All right, we'll listen to Sir Hei Wan. Someone laughed. I always thought that Sir Hei Wan was hard to get along with. In the end, it was all a rumor. All right, stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Hei Wan urged. Seeing Hei Wan leave with more than 10 people, Zhun Jin slowly walked out from behind the tree trunk. It seems that Hei Wan heard some strange sounds, so he went to investigate alone. He's bronze, he's fast, so he left the others to continue patrolling. That's why it ended up like this. The key is, what did he see? Why is he in such a hurry to go back? What should I do? Should I? Zhun Jin's face was no longer confused, but twisted and struggling. He obviously did not exercise enough, but at this moment, he was sweating all over. At this moment, he finally understood that he had been running away all this time. Suddenly, one day, he had to face the scene that he feared the most in his heart. It was so difficult to make relevant decisions. Zhun Jin had lost his former level. Under normal circumstances, Zhun Jin would have used ultrasound to detect these patrolling members in front of him. But he had been chasing after Hei Wan. Following Hei Wan, his heart was in a struggle, and his brain was a mess. Hei Wan is afraid. I can feel it. He must have discovered my secret. What am I hesitating for? Don't be so cowardly. Turn into a magical beast and kill him. It's better that others are here. They are witnesses. They will testify for me. Who knows that the magical beast that killed people is you? If you're still worried, just kill all these people, once and for all. Zhun Jin's breath became heavier and heavier. The surging killing intent in his heart made it difficult for him to control. He struggled with all his might. He was very hesitant. This is not the way of a knight. The roar in his heart became weaker and weaker. If the secret is exposed, the consequences will be unimaginable. Another voice became louder and louder. Zhun Jin had been following Hei Wan and the others all this time, and there were many times when he was about to make a move. The small valley appeared in everyone's vision. Hei Wan and the others were about to return to the camp. Zhun Jin's voice became louder and louder, as if he was roaring, "Hurry up and make a move. If you don't make a move now, it will be too late." The sun sank below the horizon, and night fell. The night wind blew wildly, and Zhun Jin's rough breathing mixed with the wind, unable to be heard clearly. His fingers clawed viciously, crushing the bark and part of the wood. Zhun Jin's face was full of viciousness, and his gaze was incomparably fierce. Roar! He raised his head and roared. Chapter 141. The bat monkey Zhun Jin's beastly roar startled the birds nearby, and they all flew into the sky. This movement also attracted the attention of Hei Wan's group. They subconsciously stopped and turned to look behind them. What was that sound? Did you guys hear anything just now? It sounded like a bat monkey was roaring. How is that possible? Hei Wan laughed. Bat monkeys are always in groups. Even if it's a stray bat monkey that has been banished by its own group, it wouldn't dare to go near the valley camp. Why don't we go investigate? Someone suggested. Heiwan shook his head. There's no need. A single stray bat monkey doesn't pose any threat. Was there really any movement just now? Why didn't I hear anything? The wind is blowing and it's getting louder and louder. The camp is right in front of us. Aren't some of you too nervous? Everyone knew Heiwan's strength. Since the bronze-ranked elites said so, everyone was relieved. It should just be the sound of the wind. All right, let's go back to the camp. Heiwan's group walked into the valley. In the distance, in the canopy, the bat monkey Jinjin was no longer roaring. Instead, he was clenching his teeth. That roar just now seemed to have vented all the killing intent and impulsiveness in his heart. No, I am Jinjin. I am Jinjin. The bat monkey Jinjin was half kneeling on a tree branch. He was hunched over, as if he was carrying a heavy burden. I am a temple knight. His forehead was already wet. It was very strange. He wouldn't have sweated so much when he was chasing after them earlier. The fog in his eyes gradually dissipated. There seemed to be a candle flame in the fog. The candle flame flickered and burned, gradually becoming firm. I'm not a murderer. I can't do it, and I shouldn't kill Heiwan. I protect the kind and the weak. I uphold justice and fairness. I will not slaughter the innocent. Never. Jinjin kept swearing in his heart. He took deep breaths. At this moment, he seemed to have entered a state of exhaustion. He felt like he was about to collapse. In the end, he took a deep look at the valley, turned around, and staggered back the way he came. Hurry up and leave. Your secret has been exposed. Go and don't come back. Just pretend that Jinjin is dead. This way, you can at least leave a good name for yourself. If your secret is confirmed, the Hundred Needles clan will be humiliated. Shut up, Jinjin roared in his heart. I will not run away. I am a leader. I will take these people and escape from this island. No matter what they think of me, I will practice my way of the night. I will fulfill my responsibility as a leader. If the secret is completely exposed, then I will also have to face it, even if they misunderstand me, hate me, or reject me, because this is what I should do. On the way back, Jinjin made up his mind. After finding his equipment again, Jinjin put them on neatly. Although he had worn them many times, he had never felt the weight of the clothes on his body. It was heavier than Zhong Ji's full body armor. The youth's footsteps seemed to be heavier. He walked back to the valley, expressionless. The dark and gloomy rainforest, layer upon layer. The vegetation that filled his vision was like a wall. The night was thick, as if there was no light in front of him. What a difficult journey it was. Jinjin had long been accustomed to trekking in the rainforest. There were no fierce magical beasts blocking the way. However, Jinjin felt that it was extremely difficult. It seemed that every step consumed a great deal of his physical strength and mental strength. Deep in his heart, there was a weak voice. This voice was constantly praying, "Let this journey be eternal. Let him walk forever, never reaching the end." The return journey was limited. Jinjin finally arrived outside the small valley. He saw the camp outside the valley, saw the fire in the valley, and felt the presence of people. In the past, every time he returned, he would feel warmth in his heart when he saw these traces of people. But now, whether it was the camp gate, the guards, or the fire and the fragrant smoke, they seemed to be separated from him by a layer. It was only a layer, but it was as far as the distance between heaven and earth. Jinjin took a deep breath and tried hard to straighten his chest. As if he was going to the execution ground, he walked toward the camp gate. Lord Jinjin is back. The guards greeted and hurriedly opened the camp gate for Jinjin. They looked at Jinjin with eyes full of worship and respect. But these words, these eyes, were no longer as warm as before. They gave Jinjin the motivation to move forward. They were like sharp arrows, flying into Jinjin's heart and fiercely stabbing him, making him feel a twitching pain. After passing through the camp gate, Jinjin quickly arrived at the open space in the valley. This place had already been transformed into a dock. The keel and mast were placed in the corners, and a large number of hemp ropes were arranged together. All of them had been smeared with the ointment ZD had provided. After a period of drying and then drying, The hemp ropes would become even sturdier and more durable. They could be used as sails. Walking through the open space and halfway to the cave, Jin Jun saw many people. These people had just finished their work and were currently sitting around a long wooden table, eating dinner. The arrival of Jin Jun made all the diners stand up and salute. This was a completely spontaneous action. Now, in the face of this, Jin Jun felt an invisible oppressive force. They still don't know. Once the secret is exposed, what will they think of me? Jun Jin's eyes were filled with bitterness. At the same time, he smiled at them, indicating that they should sit down and continue eating. Passing through the crowd, Jun Jin saw Baiya. "Sir Jin Jin, you're back. Everyone is looking for you." "They're all in the large cave," Baiya said respectfully. Jin Jin nodded. He came to the large cave. This cave was the largest cave in the small valley. It was used to hold meetings and discuss important matters. Previously, when the shipwright presented the draft of the ship, it was in this cave. Now, Zhonggu, ZD, Song-Su, and the others were all inside. Obviously, they had already learned of the situation from Heiwan. Standing in front of the large cave, Jun Jin could not help but stop. At this moment, his feet felt like there was an invisible mountain pressing down on them. The sound of escaping grew louder and louder in his heart. He could not step out. In his eyes, this cave seemed to grow bigger and bigger. The entrance became pitch black, becoming the entrance to an abyss that swallowed everything. Jin Jin took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and opened them again. He held his breath, braced himself, and walked into the large cave. Just as he expected, when he appeared, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. Song-Su, ZD, Zhonggu, Sandao, Heiwan, and the others were all sitting around the rectangular stone table. The main seat was still empty. That was Jun Jin's seat. "Sir," ZD sat on the left side of the main seat and smiled at Jin Jin. But the smile was very forced. Everyone else's expression was very heavy. Heiwan's expression was still filled with fear. "He's finished," Jin Jin sighed. "Perhaps we're in big trouble," Zhonggu said. Jin Jin felt his mouth go dry. He stood in place, like a criminal who was about to hear his sentence. ZD said, "Heiwan, repeat the information you just received." Heiwan swallowed his saliva and quickly said with lingering fear, "I saw a monster from afar. It was very terrifying. A large group of horned black panthers were not its match. Its attacks were strange and mysterious. With a light touch, those horned black panthers would fall to the ground, no matter how strong they were. This was definitely a massacre, a complete massacre. A large group of horned black panthers, at least 50 of them, was easily wiped out by this monster. It was easier than drinking water. It's too scary. It's really too scary. I feel that we're not its match." After discovering it, I immediately rushed back to the camp and reported this important information. To avoid panic, I didn't tell anyone else. "Jun Jin, we've analyzed it. This terrifying monster is at least silver tier," ZD said in a serious tone. "No, even if it's silver tier, such as the blue dog fox wolf, it wouldn't be so easy to kill a group of horned black panthers. It's more likely that it's a gold tier monster." Zhonggu expressed his opinion. Gold tier. Jin Jin thought about this level. He slowly frowned, then slowly walked back to his seat and sat down. "What kind of monster is it?" Jin Jin stared at Heiwan and asked. Heiwan shook his head. "I was very far away at that time, so I couldn't see it clearly. In fact, I discovered it purely by accident. I was distracted by a strange sound. The others weren't as fast as me, so I immediately asked around and rushed over to investigate. When the strange sound disappeared, I looked around and discovered this terrifying monster. I thought this information was too important. I also felt that this monster seemed to have noticed me, so I immediately turned around and retreated, rushing back as fast as I could." Zhonggu snorted, very dissatisfied with Heiwan's performance. He looked at Jun Jin. He saw very blurry. He didn't even see the characteristics of this monster. He only saw that it was a huge ape with golden hair. "To deal with this monster, we need more detailed information." Hearing this, Junjin leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Then he heard ZD's voice. We do need more information, but I think that Hei-Wan didn't do anything wrong. According to this terrifying monster's combat power, Hei-Wan wouldn't be its opponent. If he hesitated for a moment, it's very likely that he would have died at the hands of this monster. He was able to bring back information in time and alert us. This is enough credit. Jinjin opened his eyes. He understood. Before this, there might have been a small dispute here. Zhonggu was dissatisfied with Hei-Wan. He thought that Hei-Wan ran away because of cowardice, when he could have brought back more information. As the employer who hired Hei-Wan, ZD naturally had to protect her own people. Sure enough, Zhonggu immediately snorted. If Hei-Wan died, wouldn't we have noticed? Corpses can talk. We would have gotten more information. His actions have already violated our rules. At least after he met up with the team, he should have sent 2 people to report and continue to investigate. Now, we only know some of this monster's appearance. We know nothing else. In this vast forest, it's too difficult for us to find a monster. If we can't find it, we have to be on guard at all times. This passive defense will take up a lot of our attention and energy. Zhonggu. Junjin waved his hand. I understand you, but please try to understand them. Hei-Wan is a mercenary, not a soldier. Zhonggu didn't say anything else. Jinjin turned his head to look at ZD and Hei-Wan. Changing the topic, of course, Hei-Wan, your actions have indeed violated the rules. Your following actions and orders have indeed caused us to miss a good opportunity to obtain information. But I don't think it's because of cowardice. You are not a coward. I clearly remember the first time I saw you. You and the bat monkey were fighting to the death. You have contributed greatly by bringing the information back to us. But as you can see, the others have a lot of objections to you. I'll give you the task of investigating this monster. Tomorrow, you will lead a small team deep into the forest to gather relevant information. I hope you will be able to complete this task and eliminate the objections of others. As soon as Junjin finished speaking, Hei-Wan immediately stood up and said loudly, Lord Jinjin, I accept this task. I will make the others shut up. After saying this, he glared at Zhonggu, full of anger. Zhonggu snorted and didn't bicker with him. The meeting ended. Junjin and the others left the big cave. His heart was filled with a strong sense of relief. He didn't expect that he would still be able to walk out of this cave as a temple knight. The truth is actually like this. Hei-Wan didn't see it clearly. Now that I think about it, it is actually like this. A person's eyesight is limited. Unlike an eagle, to be able to see a blurry figure from so far away and treat the golden scorpion shell as fur, Hei-Wan's eyesight is better than ordinary people. So close, so close. If I didn't control myself at that time and killed Hei-Wan, or even that small team, what would have happened? For the rest of my life, I would have been tormented by regret and guilt. Fortunately, in the end, I adhered to the principles of a knight. Grumble. Junjin's stomach made a strange sound. After he completely relaxed, he immediately felt a strong sense of hunger. After eating a big meal, Junjin returned to his residence. He was exhausted, more tired than when he was defending the camp. He lay on the bed and let out a long breath. His blue eyes shone with the light of hope. I am still a temple knight, a knight of God. No one will suspect me. From now on, I will pay special attention to only mutate at night and practice in private. During the day, I will try to minimize the mutation. Even if there is a mutation, I will use ultrasound to investigate the surroundings. For those who are afraid and worried because of this, I can only say sorry. But just like the blue dog fox wolf before, I believe that after a while, you will gradually get used to it. I won't practice tonight. I want to have good rest. Today is really too tiring. Oh, I haven't even absorbed those scale-horned panthers. Forget it. Let Hei-Wan find out. In this way, Jin Jun fell asleep in a daze. Not long after, he suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. He was panting and still in shock. Just now, he had a nightmare. Everyone had discovered his secret, and he was deserted by his friends and family. Even ZD was looking at him suspiciously. It's just a nightmare. Zhenjin gritted his teeth and went back to sleep. After a while, he was awakened by the nightmare again. The content of the nightmare was similar. And this time, ZD, who had always protected him, was also treated as a monster. After calming down, Zhenjin fell asleep again. When he was awakened by the nightmare for the third time, he sat on the bed in silence for a long time. The young knight, who was physically and mentally exhausted and haggard, finally realized a fact. The secret was not exposed. Nothing seemed to have changed, but in fact, he could no longer go back. Chapter 142. The dense vegetation almost covered the entire sky, and the air was humid and hot. Because it had been raining for the past few days, there were many places with raindrops. Hei Wan and the rest shuttled through the bushes and vines, and soon they were all soaked. In front of us is the edge of the area we control after clearing out the horde. Everyone be careful. Hei Wan frowned and said, "Yes." The 10 people behind him answered in unison. After a while, Black Scroll led everyone to stand in the middle of the messy battlefield. The battlefield had been cleaned up, but there were still many clues, such as the scales of the horned Black Panther. There was a big battle here. Not too long ago. It could have been yesterday. It should be the horned Black Panther horde. They were actually the defeated side. No, it's not as simple as that. These horned Black Panther horde could not resist at all and were easily slaughtered. And the opponent is most likely just a magical beast. This could be a gold-tier magical beast. Everyone was shocked and immediately felt fear. What kind of monster could easily slaughter such a large group of horned Black Panther horde? Hei Wan's face was gloomy. He stood still and looked around. This information is very important. You two bring this information back to the camp. The rest of you follow me and continue to explore the surroundings. We must find new clues about this mysterious magical beast. Soon they found something. The clues pointed to the depths of the rainforest away from the valley. Hei Wan gritted his teeth and led the rest of the team to continue their journey. The 2 patrol members tried their best to rush back to the valley, panting as they brought back the important information. After knowing this information, the higher-ups' faces became more serious. Song Su pondered. It can actually clean up the battlefield. It seems that this mysterious magical beast's intelligence is not to be underestimated. Zhong Ji's eyes were deep. It's just a magical beast. How could it clean up the battlefield? It has companions, or it itself is a member of the magical beast army led by the blue dog fox wolf. What are the chances of this? After Zhong Ji's reminder, everyone's faces turned even uglier. That mysterious blue dog fox wolf had accompanied them all the way to the rainforest and had repeatedly subdued groups of beasts. However, the huge magical beast army had never appeared. ZD looked at Zhenjin worriedly. "Sir, you were still on night patrol last night. Please don't do that, okay? A huge magical beast army might be lurking around us. That blue dog fox wolf might have learned its lesson and tamed a new type of terrifying magical beast. Sir, although you have the power of the soul, you're still alone in the middle of the night." Zhenjin's expression was heavy. The person who was going to clean up the battlefield was naturally him. Last night, he had several nightmares in a row. He was no longer in a mood to sleep, so he went on the night patrol again. He rushed to the battlefield, where the corpses of the scaled horned Black Panther lay. Zhenjin absorbed all of them, turned them into mana, and stored them in the magic core. It's best to make these corpses disappear. If I ask Hei Wan to clean up the battlefield tomorrow, he will bring them all back. The shrewd Song Su might find out from the corpses that they were electrocuted to death or paralyzed, and I'll finish them off on the spot. This would be very disadvantageous for Zhenjin. Of course, the fewer flaws there were, the better. After yesterday's fright, Zhenjin became very cautious. He was afraid that he would miss out on something and reveal flaws. Even if these flaws were very small, when accumulated, they would make people think. Although Zhenjin's ability to discharge electricity was not known to anyone. But what about the future? If there was a situation that forced Zhenjin to use his electric shock ability in public, Then if he did not deal with the scaled horned Black Panther corpses today, there would be flaws. Lady Zed's words make a lot of sense. Master, your personal safety is related to the overall situation. All this time, it was because of you that we were able to reunite, build ships together, and work together to escape together. Without you to lead us, we will become scattered sand. You have a high status. You shouldn't personally take the risk. Lan Zhao also advised. Song Su and the others nodded one after another. Even Zhonggu said, Holy Knight, we can all understand your feelings, and we know that you are brave and never shirk your responsibility as a leader. But because of this, we have to be even more careful. If you're surrounded by the magical beast army in the middle of the night, or if that mysterious magical beast attacks you, it will be a huge blow to our side. When the two armies are at war, the commander can't just run around. Zhen Jin's face was expressionless. If it was before He Wan's investigation, Zed's concern, Lan Zhao's praise, and Zhongji's approval might have made him feel good and stimulated his sense of honor and responsibility. But now, a warm feeling rose in his heart, and it quickly turned cold. He couldn't help but think, if my secret is known by others, what will their attitude be like? The young knight's heart was filled with complex emotions. These emotions were difficult to express, and he didn't dare to express them. In the end, he nodded. I will consider your opinions. Thank you for your concern. Late that night, Zhen Jin once again went on a night patrol. He turned into a scaled-horned Black Panther. He was only at the level of Black Iron at the moment, and he had only recently mastered this life form. The sense of novelty brought about by the brand-new life form had completely vanished. He turned into a monkey-tail brown bear, a bat monkey, a spear scorpion, a green lizard, and so on. Compared to his previous excitement and hard work, he now felt like there was a huge rock pressing down on his heart. He once again practiced releasing electricity. This kind of muscle movement was obviously something he had painstakingly figured out, and finally, with a trace of inspiration and luck. He should have felt a great sense of accomplishment, especially after yesterday's battle, when his ability to release electricity shone brilliantly. But his face was calm. There was even a faint trace of irritation and disgust in his heart. In the past, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how hard it was, Zhen Jin only needed to think about his responsibilities, think about his fiancée, think about Song Su, Mu Ban, and the others, and he would gladly endure it. But now, thinking about them, Zhen Jin's heart was no longer full of warmth but a little cold. There was more estrangement. There was more defense. The secret was not exposed, and these people treated Zhen Jin the same as before, but Zhen Jin was different. Shengming Emperor, my lord, your holy light shone on me and made me realize that I am a helpless sinner, and you are the great victor and savior. Through your love and grace, I admit that I am a sinner, and I am willing to repent of everything. I beg you to forgive all my sins. Help me, cleanse me with the holy light, and let me continue to practice the path of knights that you have shown me. After the training, Zhen Jin half knelt on the ground, facing the direction of the Shengming continent, and lowered his head to pray. This was an action he had never done before. But like all his previous prayers, Zhen Jin still did not receive a response. The rainforest in the middle of the night was full of life, but in Zhen Jin's silence, the roars of beasts and the chirping of birds could be heard from time to time. The sun rose and set. The rain stopped, and the rain began. Although it wasn't as heavy as before, it was still rainy and gloomy from time to time. The decision to transform the small valley into a dock was becoming more and more wise and correct. The empty space in the small valley was gradually filled with shipboards. Some of the shipboards were straight, while others were curved. The shipwright once again displayed his skillful skills and instructed a group of people to use the sand-burying method, which was to bury wood in the wet sand and absorb the liquid to make it soft and easy to bend. The people worked hard, and Song Su coordinated the work. Every construction team coordinated with each other, and there was no situation where the progress of each other's projects was hindered or restricted. ZD led a group of people, and it was difficult to maintain the supply of medicine. The large earth kiln was completed, although the humid environment was a hindrance to the construction of the large earth kiln. The smooth operation of the large earth kiln began to provide a stable and large amount of pig iron. ZD was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. The work of clearing out the herd of beasts continued. A radius of 50,000 meters was the limit of the people's control, and there were often herds of beasts that broke in. Although the rainforest was vast, under Zhun Jin's ultrasonic detection, not a single beast escaped the net. The scouts became more and more skilled in using bows and crossbows, and because of the earth kiln, there were more iron arrowheads, which increased their combat power. The normal beasts and the weaker magical beasts were shot to death by the scouts, and the stronger magical beasts fell one by one in the hands of Jinjin and Zhongge. Every time Jinjin brought back the corpse of a magical beast, he would be praised and worshipped by the people around him. But these praises were not as beautiful as before, and were like pieces of stone smashed into the lake in Zhun Jin's heart. The surface of the lake would ripple with joy, and the stone would sink into the soft bottom of the lake, and at the same time, it made Zhun Jin feel a faint pressure. Although ZD, Zhongge, and the others had been persuading him, Zhun Jin still maintained his night patrol every day. It seemed that since he had grasped the magic core in his heart, he had not stopped his private training every night. After the incident of He Wan's investigation, Zhun Jin's training was even more intense than before. He found that he could only fall asleep in the hours before dawn by torturing himself until he was exhausted every night. He slept deeply and no longer had nightmares. Or rather, he had nightmares and could not remember them when he woke up. After every night's training, he prayed to the Shengming Emperor. The incident of He Wan's investigation made Zhun Jin reflect on himself and his experiences. He began to examine himself. Was he bewitched by the magic core in his heart? During the defensive battle of the camp, he had repeatedly used the name of the Shengming Emperor to deceive everyone. Although his intentions were good and kind, and although the consequences would be disastrous if he did not do so, he had indeed used the name of God to deceive others. This was the sin of deceiving the world in the name of God. Why didn't I realize before that I had committed such a grave sin? Was I addicted to power? No, I did this because I had no other choice. For everyone, for as many of my companions as possible, I did this. I did not do anything wrong. Maybe I really was wrong. I repent to you, my Lord, my God. I know that God cannot be disrespected, but I was blinded. I should not have disrespected you, the great Shengming Emperor. I ask God to forgive all my sins and give me the ability to walk the path of righteousness. Let my actions, thoughts, and words be accepted by you. Zhun Jin kept reflecting and praying. God never responded, but he still prayed. He was thinking, perhaps this is a test that God has given me alone. Late at night, when Zhun Jin finished his training, he dragged his tired body back to the valley. Outside his cave residence, Fat Tongue had been waiting for a long time. Lord Zhun Jin. Fat Tongue saluted respectfully. What's the matter? Zhun Jin was a little confused. I've been hesitating for a long time. Although I know that this is not the right time, I can't bear it, Fat Tongue said cautiously. Zhun Jin became more and more curious. Please speak. There is no need to feel burdened. We are all on the same side. The young knight smiled. The smile and the word on the same side made Fat Tongue relax. Chapter 143. Sir, I'd like to remind you that President ZD's birthday is the day after tomorrow, Fat Tongue said. Birthday? Zhun Jin raised his eyebrows in surprise. He didn't expect Fat Tongue to mention this. Fat Tongue raised his eyebrows and sighed. This little one has been following the previous old guildmaster since a long time ago. I watched Miss ZD from birth until she learned how to walk. Then, she grew up little by little. All along, the old president had regarded Miss ZD as the apple of his eye and doted on her. As long as it was Miss ZD's birthday, the old president would hold a birthday party for her, no matter how big or small it was. In fact, as the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce grew bigger and Miss ZD grew older, her birthday parties became more and more grand. I still remember when Miss ZD was 11 years old, the whole Garden City became a sea of joy at her birthday party. The city lord of the Garden City even came to give his blessings. That was the heyday of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce. The old president spent a lot of money to invite a famous pastry master to make a birthday cake for Miss ZD. It was 11 layers high and colorful like a rainbow. It was made with many precious magic materials. Eating it would make people happy and feel the sweetest taste in the world. Each layer of the cake had different effects. Some could increase one's magic power, some could stimulate one's spirit, and some could double one's attack power. Even after a few months of the birthday party, the rainbow cake was still talked about enthusiastically. Fat Tongue's eyes flashed with nostalgia as he said this. But soon, this light was extinguished and Fat Tongue's tone became heavy. After the old president's accident, the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce fell apart. No one remembered Miss's birthday party anymore. In the past 2 years after Miss took over as president, we proposed to hold a birthday party for Miss many times, but Miss refused. I think it's because young Miss is afraid that she'll think of the old president. But it's different now. Lord Jinjin, now you're beside Miss ZD. You are a Templar Knight. You are the only successor of the 100 Needles clan, and you are Miss ZD's fiancé. With you here, everything will be fine, and the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce's future will be bright. Miss will also be happy. I think you don't have to say any more. Jinjin took a deep breath and approached Fat Tongue. He patted the latter's shoulder and thanked him sincerely. Thank you for your reminder. You're right. I understand my intentions now. I will hold a birthday party for ZD and give her a surprise. She's worth it. That's great. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Fat Tongue hurriedly expressed his gratitude, displaying his loyalty to the old president and the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce. Looking at Fat Tongue's back as he left, Jinjin once again fell into deep thought. Have I been too focused on myself recently? I seem to be too immersed in my own world and neglect the people around me. No matter how much trouble I have, how can I neglect the people around me? I'm indeed a little selfish. Jinjin's thoughts began to wander because of Fat Tongue's reminder and his own reflection. Thinking back, I was saved by ZD. She was willing to cover for me when I was attacked by the poisonous fire bees. In the brown bear's cave, I risked my life to fight for her, and she did her best to heal me. When Yellow Algae asked for help, she was the one who gave me advice. Yellow Algae betrayed me and escaped alone. She was the one who accompanied me to face the ferocious blade spiders. She was the one who invented the pink potion. It could mark the path and help us find the way. We ate lamb by mistake and suffered from magic corrosion. She was the one who discovered the truth and detoxified everyone. Without her contribution, we would still be trapped in this place and unable to explore freely. She was the one who created the cave with the potion and protected many of our companions in the sandstorm. She was the one who created the acid potion and resisted the encirclement of the green lizards until I came to rescue them. When we were chased by the scorpions and ran out of food and ammunition, she was still by my side, curled up in the face of death, and never separated from me. It was her potion that drove away the bat monkeys. It was also her potion that dealt with the poisonous fire bees. If these two major threats existed, the defense of the camp would have been a crushing defeat or even destruction for the human race. It was her potion that corroded metal and helped Mu Ban to create an endless supply of crossbows. It was also her potion that allowed us to have a large amount of iron in the early days of building the ship. Without ZD, I would never have reached this stage. Her contribution is really too great, but she has never shown off. She took the initiative to stand behind me willingly. She left the center of the stage for me to bear the admiration and respect of everyone. She has always supported me silently. She has never objected to almost all of my decisions. The only few times she did, it was because she was too worried about my safety. Jinjin kept reflecting, recalling every bit of his time with ZD. A sense of shame quickly grew in his heart. The young knight decided to hold a birthday party to reward and comfort ZD. ZD was definitely worth it. Her contributions were enough to shut everyone up. However, when Jinjin began to prepare, ZD noticed. She was the current president of the Wisteria Merchant Guild. She was very shrewd. "Don't do this, my lord. I've received your kind intentions, and that's enough. It's too inappropriate to hold a birthday party." There is a magical beast army hidden around us, a mysterious and terrifying magical beast suspected to be gold rank. Our food reserves have been declining. Building the ship requires a lot of hard work. The consumption can't keep up with the replenishment. There is also alcohol. We only have rum, and there are very few bottles. It is not enough to support the voyage to the wilderness continent. Sailing required alcohol, because it was difficult to obtain fresh water while sailing in the sea. The water stored on the ship, because of the limited storage technology, would soon grow green spots, bacteria, and caterpillars. The fresh water was full of a strange taste and was difficult to swallow. However, the sailors had to drink it. At times like this, alcohol was needed. Alcohol could cover up the strange taste, and at the same time, it had a certain antiseptic effect. Therefore, it was not strange that the sailors were drunk sometimes. ZD strongly opposed the birthday party, even though Jinjin said that they needed a reason to boost morale. Recently, rumors about the terrifying magical beast had spread throughout the valley, making everyone uneasy. ZD's attitude was very firm. This made Jinjin feel that ZD was considerate. At the same time, it made him feel even more ashamed. A thought suddenly appeared in the young knight's mind. Perhaps I made a mistake the first time. I shouldn't have hidden it from her. I should have told her about the mutation in my body. I didn't want her to worry at that time. In the end, step by step, it became this situation. If this continues, I will not be able to say it, and the misunderstanding will become deeper and deeper. Perhaps I was too arrogant. I didn't want her to worry. Other than pity, I also felt that even if I told her, she would not be able to solve the magic core in my heart. I don't think she can do it. Why? All this time, ZD's medicine has helped me and others too much. Perhaps she really does not have the ability to solve the mutation in my heart. But among all the people around me, who can accept the truth the most, accept my ugliness, and forgive my sins? It must be her. It must be her. It must be my fiancée. Thinking of this, Jin's eyes shone brighter. He seemed to have found a ray of light in the darkness, like a drowning man holding onto the grass by the shore. The pressure in his heart was too great. Burdened with secrets, burdened with sins, it was difficult for him to face the people who worshipped and loved him. He wanted to say it. He wanted to confide in them. He longed for someone to share the burden with him. He longed for true recognition. ZD, ZD. Jinjin called out gently in his heart, but he still could not say it. I need an opportunity. The young knight realized this. The next day, he left the valley, crossed a distance of 50,000 meters, and came to the edge of the controlled area. A huge beehive hung high on a tree. This was the beehive of the venomous fire bees. Jinjin used ultrasonic detection and accidentally found it. Before he took action, Jinjin carefully used ultrasonic detection to ensure that there was no one around. Only then did he attack the venomous fire bees. He lit a bonfire, released the medicine, and formed smoke. The venomous fire bees came out in full force and were defeated by the smoke. The venomous fire bees, which were at the level of a magical beast, could not do anything to the mutated Jinjin. On the night of ZD's birthday, Jinjin came to ZD's residence alone. "Happy birthday, ZD." Jinjin smiled and took out a bowl full of thick, amber-like honey from behind him. ZD covered her mouth, surprised and happy. "Thank you." She looked up at Jinjin. Her tone was full of affection. Her beautiful amethyst eyes shone with a touched light. "Although there's no rainbow cake now, I have tasted it. The honey is also very sweet." Jinjin said. ZD's expression changed. "Sir, you ate the honey? It is poisonous." I don't feel like I am poisoned." Maybe Sir tasted it less. It contains the essence of fire poison. If the dosage is high, even a gold level will be hurt. ZD quickly said. She immediately showed a self-blaming expression. It is my fault. I did not tell you the results of the latest research. I remember that there are no beehives around the valley. Sir, it is too dangerous for you to go on an expedition alone, even with the oil fume potion. I am willing to take the risk for you. Jinjin blurted out. Sir, ZD rolled her eyes at Jinjin. Her face showed a trace of shyness. All right, I admit that I was stupid. What I did was really reckless. I will be more careful in the future. Jinjin raised his hand and apologized. In fact, he could already mutate into a venomous fire bee. It was because of this that he took the initiative to taste the honey. Venomous fire bee honey was produced by venomous fire bees. The honey was definitely harmless to them. Jinjin put down the honey helplessly. ZD walked in front of Jinjin and took the young knight's hand. Speaking of which, this was the first time she took the initiative. She looked deeply into Jinjin's eyes and said softly, Thank you. Jinjin shook his head and looked at the bowl of honey. He was a little discouraged. ZD's eyes turned and suddenly said, Thank you for the cake. Cake? Yes, such a big cake made with non-toxic honey. Didn't you see it? ZD let go of Jinjin's hand and drew a cake shape in the air with her hands in front of her chest. Jinjin could not help but laugh and said along with ZD's words, Oh, of course I saw it. The cake is very big and has several layers. It looks a bit like a rainbow cake. No, it only has one layer. ZD shook her head. It doesn't look like a rainbow cake at all. It is sweeter than a rainbow cake. Saying this, ZD stretched out her slender index finger and gently poked the air. It seemed to be stained with cake cream. She then gently put her finger in her mouth and made a sucking motion. Her eyes narrowed, and she revealed a happy and enjoyable smile. So sweet. Don't you want to try it? She stared at Jinjin. Jinjin laughed and shook his head. Thank you for your comfort. His words were blocked because ZD stretched out her index finger and poked the air again. Then she put her finger into Jinjin's mouth. Jinjin's mouth was blocked. He subconsciously sucked ZD's finger. But ZD withdrew her finger. He could not help but say reluctantly, So sweet. He looked at the purple-eyed girl in front of him, and his heart beat faster. It's really sweet. The young knight made a similar action. He used his finger to touch the air and sucked it. Then he stretched it out again and drew an arc in the air. Today is your birthday. Please eat more. Jinjin stretched out his finger to ZD. His fingers seemed to be stained with a large piece of cream. Wow. ZD made a fierce expression. She suddenly opened her mouth wide and sucked Jinjin's finger. So delicious, ZD said vaguely. She mischievously bit Jinjin's finger with her teeth. Jinjin's breathing became heavy. ZD's face also flushed. The latter quickly let go of his finger. Jinjin looked at ZD more affectionately and took a step forward. In this way, the distance between the two was only about a fist. The atmosphere in the cave became charming and gentle. Jinjin took a deep breath and slightly gritted his teeth. ZD, there's something... Roar. The next moment, there was a sudden noise and chaos outside the cave. He's crazy. Blockhead is crazy. Someone come quickly. He wants to kill people. Jinjin and ZD's expressions suddenly changed. They immediately ran out of the cave. Jinjin was faster. He was one step ahead and arrived at the small clearing in the valley. He saw the big guy roaring crazily. His eyes were red. He held a mast in his hand and was madly waving it around. Some people who couldn't escape in time were lying on the ground. Some had pools of blood under them, and some were screaming, Sir, please save us. There was also a group of people who were trapped in a corner. When they saw Jinjin, they hurriedly called for help. The cries for help agitated the big guy. He viciously threw the broken mast in his hand at the survivors. But in the next moment, Zongu arrived and knocked the mast away with a bone hammer. Jinjin was even faster. He was like a flying arrow, rushing directly toward the big guy. The big guy beat his chest and roared angrily. He flew toward Jinjin. Jinjin was proficient in martial arts. With a slight shift, he dodged the big guy's attack and jumped on his back. Jinjin's palm hit the back of the big guy's neck. The big guy's eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the spot. "We're saved," the survivors cheered. "Kill him, kill this monster." Soon, hatred and anger filled everyone's hearts. Those who were injured and those who didn't suffer were all saying the same thing. "No, no, I beg everyone, please forgive him for my contributions." The shipwright's face was full of panic as he begged loudly. "Do you see? These are all your son's good deeds. We've worked for nothing for at least a week. That's not the point. He's too dangerous. He had this kind of crazy illness on the ship before. We've been living in fear by his side. Who knows when he'll act up again? It's too scary. He's a huge hidden danger. Look at how much he eats every day. Without him, we won't be short on supplies. Kill him. We won't go so far as to kill him. After all, he was our comrade. We can banish him or exile him." Everyone was talking about how they wanted to get rid of the big guy. "Enough," Zhun Jin shouted, his face as calm as water. "He's our comrade. He was, and he is now. He's sick. We all know that. The shipwright told us a long time ago. He did cause damage, but fortunately, none of us died. He destroyed a lot of the ship's equipment. He ate a lot of food, but his contributions far exceeded his demands. There's no doubt about that. Why can he stay on the ship and live with the others for so many years? This proves that it's possible to live with him. Why can't we? I won't give up on anyone easily, let alone a patient. He's not a monster. He's not. He's our comrade, a patient. This wasn't his intention." Zhun Jin shouted. He had never shown such a strict attitude before. Everyone was shocked by him. The whole place was silent. ZD rushed over at this time. Zhun Jin's expression eased a little. He ordered everyone to clean up the place, organize the damage, and take care of the injured, including the big guy. After everything was settled, more than an hour had passed. Only Jinjin and ZD were left. The two walked side by side. "I don't know how to treat the big guy's illness," ZD said worriedly. "I'm not a doctor. In fact, according to the shipwright, he tried to treat the big guy in the past, but all the doctors were helpless. The shipwright even spent a lot of money to hire a priest to use divine arts on the big guy. We have to consider this as a hidden danger. If the big guy suddenly goes crazy halfway through the ship's construction, the damage will be unimaginable." Zhun Jin remained silent in the middle of the night. When they were about to reach their residence, the two were about to part ways. "All right, sir, before, what did you want to say to me?" ZD asked. Zhun Jin stopped in his tracks, then slowly turned around. He opened his mouth to reveal a smile, then spoke. "Nothing. P.S. The update is slightly late, but I still feel that a 5,000-word chapter is more rhythmic and can be written with a complete plot. In addition, I fixed the typos in sections 56 to 141. There were many places where the language wasn't clear enough, but I made some adjustments based on the opinions of my readers. Chapter 144. The light of the setting sun shone on the hillside. On a relatively flat part of the hillside, there was a straw hut. In the straw hut lay the big guy. This was his residence. It wasn't that there weren't any big caves in the valley, but when the big guy slept and snored, it would cause a lot of noise in the cave. So after more and more people protested, the old shipwright took the initiative to bring the big guy here. When Jinjin, Song-su, and Lan Zhao arrived, the old shipwright ran over to greet them. "Bad guy." The big guy shrank in the straw hut and bared his teeth at Jinjin, revealing a fierce expression. "Shut up, you idiot," the old shipwright angrily scolded. "You have to thank the Lord Jinjin. He protected you, you idiot. Quickly say thank you." The big guy was dumbfounded. He could no longer maintain his ferocious expression. He scratched his head and saw that the old shipwright was still glaring at him. He was confused and aggrieved. "But Dad, he hit me." The old shipwright shook his head. "He hit you right." The big guy was even more confused. He also shook his head. "Hit me? No, this is wrong." The old shipwright coldly snorted. "Did I hit you?" The big guy was stunned. His mind immediately recalled countless scenes. When he was very young, he had a big appetite. The food on the ship was limited. He often starved. After a day of tiring, the shipwright just wanted to collapse on the ship and sleep. But when he returned to his residence, he was stunned. The cabin was a mess. The big guy, who was still an infant, was still rummaging through the cabinets. "What are you doing? You little bastard. You ate all my tobacco? You idiot. The old shipwright fiercely slapped his butt. The big guy, late at night. The old shipwright was woken up by the pain. "Why did you bite me? You idiot. I'm not a girl. There's no milk here." The injured and furious old shipwright fiercely slapped the big guy's small butt again. The big guy, when the big guy grew up. "Okay, do you remember it? That was how the deck was cleaned, with a rag and water. If there wasn't enough water, he would go to the side of the boat to fetch water. Work hard. We don't keep useless people on this ship. Do you understand?" The shipwright repeatedly reminded him. The big guy nodded. "Dad, don't worry. What did you do? Oh my God." Half a day later, the shipwright looked at the cracks and even holes on the deck. He tore his hair with both hands and almost went crazy. The big guy squatted at the side and was very confused. "Dad, you're the one who told me to work hard." The shipwright raised his head, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Then he walked in front of the big man and raised his fist. Bang, bang, bang. Wah. A boarding battle had just ended, and blood was flowing on the deck. The shipwright bandaged the big guy's wound. "I told you, don't charge in blindly, you idiot." "But they hit Dad." "They're bad guys," the big guy retorted. "You've learned to talk back." The shipwright glared at the big guy. "Damn it, we don't have enough medicine. The bleeding wouldn't stop. Damn it. Dad, don't worry, I'm not in pain." The big guy comforted. "Shut up." The shipwright subconsciously slapped the big guy's head. Just as he moved, he realized something was wrong and quickly retracted most of his strength. The shipwright's cabin was tightly shut. The big guy squatted outside the door and stared at a flying insect in boredom. The flying insect buzzed in front of the big guy, and the sound of a man and a woman panting could be heard from the cabin. "You damn ghost. Madam. Don't look at me because I look old. I'm actually very strong." Bang. The cabin door was slammed open by the big guy. "Dad!" the big guy shouted. The woman screamed. The shipwright was furious. "What are you doing? Didn't I say, no matter what you hear, you can't move?" "But Dad, I heard it. You seem to be injured. You're panting, you're tired. You can't take it anymore." The shipwright stared at her. "Can't take it anymore." His eyes twitched, and he directly ran down from the bed barefooted. He raised his leg and kicked the big guy. "You said I can't take it anymore? You said I can't take it anymore." The big guy shouted and ran away like a rat. Back to reality. Seeing the big guy in a daze, the shipwright repeated. "Did I hit you before?" "Yes, many times." The big guy honestly said. "I hit you, but did I really hurt you?" The shipwright continued. "No. So this kind of beating is different from other kinds of beating. Beating you like this is to protect you. Understand? If Lord Jinjin didn't knock you out, you would have caused more damage, more trouble. His Excellency hit you for your own good. Understand?" The big guy doesn't understand. The big guy shook his head. "HM." The shipwright stared and raised his fist. The big guy hurriedly nodded. "And I understand." "Good." Seeing the shipwright stabilize the situation, Zhun Jin smiled. "It's good to see you guys so energetic." Saying so, the young leader looked at Song Su. Song Su nodded and walked into the straw hut. The shipwright shouted, "Don't move." The big guy didn't move at all, letting Song Su watch and do whatever he wanted. Song Su even waved his hand, telling the big guy to lower his head. Of course, the big guy wouldn't do that, but the shipwright quickly gave the order. Song Su opened the big guy's eyelids and carefully looked at his pupils. He then asked the shipwright to make the big guy open his mouth, endured the unspeakable stench, and looked at the big guy's teeth. After observing for a while, Song Su left the straw hut. Returning to Zhun Jin's side, the old scholar shook his head. "Sir, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Go ahead. Everyone knows you're not a doctor." The old scholar said, "It's very clear the big guy has a lot of physical signs showing that he has a giant bloodline. He's a mixed blood. His giant bloodline is very thin and also seems to be very low level. Sir, as you know, a lot of giants have worrying intelligence. Maybe it's because of this low-level giant bloodline that the big guy can't be as smart as a normal person. I can't find the cause of his madness, but I suspect that it might be related to his brain. If I can open his skull and dissect it, I might be able to find the cause. Song Su's words shocked the shipwright. But Junjin immediately said, "Don't mention dissection so often, I understand. The big guy should rest well for the next few days. Don't go to work. Let's go back first." The shipwright quickly sent them off. On the way back, Junjin asked Song Su, "How do you think the big guy should be dealt with?" Song Su analyzed, "The big guy is very valuable. Although he consumes a lot of food, he does a lot of work. His contributions and hard work were many. Sometimes, the big guy can do a lot of work very well, but if other people want to do the same work, it will take a lot of time, and they might even fail. Although the big guy went crazy, he did cause a lot of damage. But because Sir acted in time to stop him, the damage wasn't that great. Many people were injured, but no one died." Song Su's analysis carried his usual calmness and rationality. Zhenjin turned to look at Lan Zhao behind him. "I'm more curious. The big guy's strength is fierce when he goes crazy. He's a big threat to ships. Why did the pig's kiss allow him to stay on the ship?" Lan Zhao was silent for a moment, then said, "The main reason should be the old shipwright. He came on the ship much earlier than me. I also heard from many people that the old shipwright paid a lot to raise his son. Master, you also saw the old shipwright skills are superb. Normal people can't make ships. Of course, because we were always on guard against a big guy. When we were next to him, we were all on edge. This greatly reduced the damage caused by the big guy when he went crazy." Zhenjin frowned slightly, but I saw that there were several crew members among the injured. "Yes, master. Ever since the big guy came on this island, he never went crazy. After such a long time, the crew's attention was focused on how to survive, how to escape from here. It's normal to overlook the danger of the big guy, including me." Lan Zhao continued. "In fact, in order to protect the ship against the hidden danger of the big guy's illness, the captain spent a lot of money to buy a magic tool. It can protect the cabin and the deck for a certain period of time, and the big guy can't destroy it. Maybe there's another reason." Lan Zhao said with a bit of hesitation. "We suspect that the big guy's illness also serves as a warning. Whenever danger comes, the big guy will go crazy." "Oh." Zhenjin and Song Su paused slightly. Song Su said suspiciously, "On the way here, how many times did we encounter danger, but the big guy didn't go crazy? Is this accurate?" Zhenjin frowned slightly. "It's not accurate." Lan Zhao smiled embarrassedly. "In fact, we can't be sure. But in a year, there will be a few times when the big guy goes crazy, and there will be a storm or strong winds and huge waves." Song Su asked, "Then how many times does the big guy go crazy in a year? 20 times? 30 times? Lan Zhao shook his head. "We didn't count." Song Su smiled, and the old scholar shook his head slightly. "The climate of the deep sea is often like the temper and mood of a young girl in love. It's unpredictable. However, the crew members live in small cabins, and they have to work hard every day. Every day, they have to face the endless sea. The pressure is great, and they can rely on anything. Therefore, the sailors are more devout than the people on land. Sir, please allow me to leave." "Go." Zhenjin nodded. He knew that Song Su's work was actually very complicated, and the workload was also very large. After parting with Song Su, the master and servant rushed to the cave where the wounded were staying to comfort them. Chapter 145. Zhen Jin's protection of the big guy did not diminish his prestige. Perhaps the others did not understand, but they still worshipped and respected Zhen Jin. Needlecloud was a divine knight with the strongest individual combat strength. He was also a holy knight, the heir of the 100 Needles family, and the future lord of White Sand City. He also had a group of followers who always followed him closely. At the same time, the most capable competitor, Zhonggu, also expressed his obedience. Zhen Jin's leadership was unshakable. After comforting the wounded, Zhen Jin received a lot of words of gratitude. It was the big man, not the Needle King, who was hated and guarded against. In fact, if Zhen Jin had not knocked out the big guy, they would have been in more danger. It was Zhen Jin who saved them. If the big guy was an unforgivable murderer, perhaps some people could blame Zhen Jin. Was this the justice of a holy knight? But the big guy was sick, and this illness had been around for a long time, so the shipwright did not hide it and said it long ago. Although the people's mentality was like this, after his own condolences, Zhen Jin secretly ordered Shisua to arrange for some crew members to take the initiative to communicate with the wounded and carry out a certain degree of guidance. Speaking of which, the crazy warning is a very good reason. Zhen Jin pointed at Shisua. I don't need you to lie. This will only lead to flaws and make mistakes. Let the crew members who have been with the big guy for a long time tell the truth. I understand. Sir, I promise to complete this task. Shisua was very excited. Speaking of which, he had already pledged allegiance to Zhen Jin, but he did not have a chance to show off. In terms of strength, he was not as good as Zhonggu. In terms of loyalty, he was not as good as Lanzeo or Baya. He did not have Tsang Su's wisdom, nor did he have Zidi's ability to make potions. Shisua was under a lot of pressure. He wanted to stand out, but was overshadowed by the people around him. For the first time, Zhen Jin assigned a mission to Shisua. This is a private job. Shisua was excited. He vaguely felt that he had found a way out. That's right, I can do some private and dirty work for my lord. Why didn't I think of that before? Even if Sir is a temple knight and abides by the path of the night, your heart is bright. But there will always be some things that are inconvenient for you to do, such as this. For most people, the big guy's illness was a bad thing. But for Shisua, it was an opportunity for him. This is a good thing. It will allow me to deepen the Lord Zhen Jin's impression of me. I must do this well. Shisua was excited and started to take action. And on Zhen Jin's side, after being interrupted by the big guy's illness, he found it harder and harder to tell his secrets to ZD. His days seemed to have returned to how they were before. Every night, he would undergo arduous training. The first half of the day would be used to catch up on sleep, and the second half of the day would be used to clear out the beasts. Every time he succeeded in hunting, he would bring back prey that would continuously strengthen his authority and position. He constantly reminded everyone that he was a powerful leader and put an end to any thoughts of offending him. At the same time, he also quietly increased his vigilance. After all, the big guy's illness would give him a warning. But after that, no disaster occurred. And almost every time after dinner, Zhen Jin would go to visit the wounded and sometimes bring medicine. The medicine was made by ZD and distributed by Zhen Jin himself. This act of distributing medicine seemed very small, but in fact it had a deep meaning. The wounded were in urgent need of medicine. In the whole camp, it seemed that only Zhen Jin could distribute medicine. According to the words of the Empire's East, this was called sending charcoal in snowy weather. The small medicine, after being distributed by Zhen Jin, was able to display its value beyond its own. But without the big guy, the efficiency of the shipbuilding decreased by a lot. Just as Tsang Su said, the big guy played an important role in the work. Almost a week later, Zhen Jin once again came to the grass hut on the hillside and discussed with the shipwright about letting the big guy resume his work. The shipwright did not hesitate and immediately agreed, because these days he saw very clearly that Zhen Jin's continuous consolation dispelled the grief and anger of the wounded. And behind the actions of Shisua and the other crew members, there was also Zhen Jin's shadow. Sir, you are a wise leader. The shipwright was now willing to submit to Zhen Jin. Once, when he woke up in the camp, he heard that Zhen Jin had accepted Zhonggu, Sandao, and the others and was very worried, thinking that Zhen Jin might be too young. Along the way, the shipwright's view of Zhen Jin had greatly changed. Now, the shipwright completely realized the knight in front of him, although young, was definitely not a simple believer. He upheld the way of the knight, But at the same time, he did not let down the identity and bloodline of the nobility. He had profound tactics. You have to continue tomorrow. You have to work hard. If someone scolds you, what will you do? The shipwright asked the big guy in front of Jinjin. Just pretend I didn't hear anything. The big guy replied. What if they hit you? The shipwright asked again. If it doesn't hurt like throwing stones at me, I won't scream. If it hurts, I'll scream. If someone hurts me and makes me bleed, I'll scream for my father. The big guy replied smoothly. The shipwright nodded in satisfaction. He turned to Jinjin and guaranteed, Sir, the big guy is already prepared. Actually, he's not stupid. He knows how to deal with it. Actually, I've already told him about it. Don't worry. Jinjin stared at the big guy in the straw hut. The big guy's body was obviously huge, but he was currently lying on the straw hut, curled up. It could be seen that the shipwright had been educating him for the past few days. At the same time, Jinjin could easily guess that the big guy's life on the pig kiss was filled with rejection and disgust. He was often scolded and even beaten. Most of the sailors had bad tempers, so they would definitely throw things at the big guy. And if the big guy was not in pain, he would not scream. There were only two weapons he could use to resist. One was to scream. The other was to scream for his father. The big guy curled up in the straw hut was the same as before. His hair was disheveled, his mouth full of yellow teeth. His appearance was ugly, and if one looked carefully, his head was big and his body was small, and he was somewhat deformed. It was as if he had lived on a ship for a long time and was used to bending down and shrinking his head, or as if he was afraid of Jinjin. His gaze was evasive, and he was timid. Just based on his appearance, the big guy was not likable and even disgusting. This was human nature. But now, when Jinjin heard all of this and saw all of this, his emotions were extremely complicated. He was not feeling well. Other than the position of pity, there was something else that was stuck in his heart, making him want to express it, but unable to do so. It made him anxious. In the next few days, Jinjin paid close attention to the big guy. There were no accidents. The big guy restrained himself and took the initiative to make way. If someone came close to him, he would quickly hide in the corner. His huge body, when curled up, was somewhat comical. Many people could not help but laugh, and their mood gradually relaxed. But Jinjin, who was observing all of this, could not laugh. His heart became heavier and heavier. As if he had received the shipwright's instructions, the big guy worked even harder. With the big guy's participation, the progress of the shipbuilding work increased by leaps and bounds. On this day, the weather was clear. Everyone was gathered together. In the empty space of the small valley, they were carrying out an important task. Yes, just like that. Slow down a bit. Stick the mast into this square hole, the shipwright instructed. You have to be slow. The shipwright was still worried and reminded him again. Under his father's instructions, the big guy's expression was very serious. He carefully inserted the mast into the hole in the keel. Very good. The shipwright was overjoyed and praised. The mast had to be fixed on the keel. Only by doing so could they obtain the most stable mast. If they were only inserted on the deck after the mast was raised, it would be torn apart by the wind and could even endanger the entire ship. The first mast had been inserted. According to the ship's blueprint, this was the front mast. Good, next it's the rear mast. HM. The shipwright looked up. He noticed the big guy was strangely silent, suddenly very abnormal. His head was lowered, his hand was still holding the mast, his entire body was motionless. Jinjin immediately squinted his eyes. He felt a faint sense of danger. The shipwright shouted a few times, but the big guy didn't answer. His expression also became panicked. The big guy started to pant, like an exhausted old bull. He grimaced, his eyes becoming redder and redder. Damn it! Seeing this, the shipwright's heart sank, but he still didn't give up, still shouting. Calm down, quickly calm down, you little bastard. Run, he's going crazy again. An experienced sailor shouted, turned around and ran. In a flash, the empty space of the valley became a mess. Roar! The big guy roared. He suddenly pulled, and threw the mast that he had just inserted out. The mast hit the mountain wall, the front half broke, but the back half stuck into the mountain rocks. The big guy swung his fist at the keel again. But at this time, Jean went against the flow, his body like lightning, directly jumped behind the big guy, and once again hit the back of his neck, knocking him out. Everything had just started, and it was already over. The situation was still under Jean's control. "The keel is fine, it's fine," the shipwright shouted loudly, feeling very lucky. The rest of the people gathered around, all of them still in shock, their hearts still beating fast. The big guy went crazy again. "How many days has it been? No, I can't work with him anymore. I don't want to die without knowing why. His usual behavior, it's all a disguise. We can't be deceived by him anymore. He is the blood of giants. I heard that many giants eat people. This kind of illness can't be cured. Didn't you hear what the sailors said? We can't keep this big idiot by our side. Who knows when he'll go crazy again?" Jean stood on the big guy's back. His strict gaze swept around. The discussion immediately quieted down. "All right," the young leader shouted. "Today's work is done. Go eat." He then pointed at a few former mercenaries and Lonzeo and ordered them to drag the big guy back to the straw hut. "Lord Jean, I can put the big guy in shackles." The shipwright ran to Jean's side. With an anxious expression, he took the initiative to say, "When we were on the ship, the big guy often wore shackles. He's used to it." Jean frowned. He patted the shipwright's shoulder. "Don't worry, I don't blame you, nor do I have any intention of blaming the big guy. It's just a front mast, it's easy to make." Hearing Jean's words, the shipwright immediately let out a sigh of relief, but he still insisted on putting the big guy in shackles. Speaking from the bottom of his heart, Jean was not willing to put the big guy in shackles. He was disgusted, but other than that, what else could he do? Jean privately called Shiso. "Do you know what I want you to do?" "I understand, sir. This time it's even simpler than the last time. We didn't have any casualties. Sir, you're really wise. Look at how scared these people are. They're too cowardly. A bit of mockery and ridicule should be able to stimulate their courage." Seeing that Shisuo understood his meaning, Jean nodded with satisfaction. "Go do it." Jean needed the big guy to work, but not only because of the large amount of work involved in building the ship, or because he needed to appease the shipwright. The young knight also had a deeper motivation. He wanted to help the big guy. He wanted to protect the big guy. He wanted to find a way for the big guy to live in harmony with the others. On the night of the big guy's illness, an unexpected thing happened. Rumble. The earth trembled, stones rolled, and giant trees fell one after another. Most people woke up from their sleep. They ran out of their caves and out of the small valley in panic. Earthquake. Chapter 146. There's actually an earthquake. Jean quickly rushed back from the wilderness. When the earthquake happened, he was still training his crocodile-headed hammertail form. What made Jean relieved was that when he rushed back to the small valley, he did not see a chaotic scene. Although he was not there, Song-Su, ZD, and Zonggu worked together to quickly stabilize the situation and began to clean up the camp. The scale of the earthquake was not large, and it came and went quickly. The empty space in the valley that Jean was worried about, the keel and the mast were not damaged. The wooden roof above the construction site was the biggest contributor this time. It firmly blocked the falling rubble and protected the results of everyone's work. After inspection, a lot of rubble was piled up on the wooden roof. Many places were smashed with holes, and even more wooden planks were full of cracks. Mu Ban reported to Jean with a dignified expression. "Sir, the wooden roof not only needs to be renovated, but also needs to be reinforced." Zonggu frowned. "We have been on this island for so long, but we have never encountered an earthquake. Even the strong half-beastmen felt powerless in the face of such a natural disaster." ZD said, "Is there only one earthquake? To tell you the truth, I have a bad feeling about this. If there are more earthquakes, then our current residents will be very dangerous. Everyone lived in caves. If there was a stronger earthquake, it would cause the mountain to collapse, and these people sleeping in the caves would basically be crushed to death or buried alive. Also, the shipbuilding would become a big problem. Originally, they arranged the construction site in the small valley to use the terrain to build a dock, saving a lot of labor, materials, and time. But now, if the earthquake continued, the small valley would become a dangerous place. It was far worse than an open or flat area. This time, only some small stones on the mountain collapsed. If the earthquake was more violent, large stones would roll down and the ship would suffer great damage. Jean sighed, then said firmly, "This is the effect of the big guy going crazy. He is warning us." Song Su, who was at the side, was stunned for a moment before he nodded in agreement. That's true. It seems like the big guy has a decisive role. His relapse is a great thing for us. Jean looked at Song Su with admiration and said, "Don't stay in the cave tonight. Let's stay in tents in the wilderness for now. From tomorrow onwards, we need to clear out a large area of the forest around the valley. If we want to make a slide, at least part of it will extend out of the valley. If an earthquake happens, we can quickly move the important hull components out." After Jean finished speaking, he glanced around and then stopped at Shisua. Shisua's expression changed slightly. He immediately understood that Jean wanted him to continue the promotion. He nodded slightly and left quietly after greeting Jean. Jean knew very well that it was unreliable to say that the big guy's craziness could warn them this time. This was an excuse, but it could change everyone's impression of the big guy. Jean needed the big guy to return to work. He needed such an important labor force. Others might have some complaints, but Jean did not care about them in this situation. The most basic responsibility of a leader was to distinguish between the important and the urgent. To be honest, I feel the same as President ZD. The earthquake has never happened before, but now there is one. It seems like something is happening in a place that we don't know about. Everything is starting to go wrong. Next, we need to do our best to build a ship that can sail as quickly as possible. After saying this, Jean looked at the shipwright with a sharp gaze. No matter what method you use, you have to shorten the construction period. If you can cut corners, then cut corners. We need a ship that can sail first. After that, we can work on the ship until it is time to sail. The shipwright quickly bowed and accepted the order. "I understand, sir." The shipwright worked through the night and did not rest to rush out a new ship blueprint. It was different from the original blueprint. The new ship was 1/5 smaller, and many cabins were removed. Originally, everyone had hammocks to sleep in, but now there were only some grass mats left where the hammocks were. A complete mast was originally connected. Now, the mast height was reduced by at least half. In the future, if they wanted to increase the mast height, they would have to be joined together during the voyage. In the original blueprint, there were more than 10 ballistae in addition to the cannons. But now, there were still 3 cannons, and the number of ballistae had been reduced by half. The cannons were salvaged from the wreckage of the Pig's Kiss. The original plan was to build more than 10 ballistae to replace the cannons to a certain extent. It was impossible to sail without firepower. Whether it was the fishmen, sea monsters, or pirates, they were all a huge threat to long-distance sailing ships. But now, there were no more ballistae. As for the ballistae in the blueprint, they were all in the camp's control. There is no need to make so many sails. We can let people contribute their own clothes, and these clothes can be pieced together to form simple sails. Actually, it is also possible for men to go shirtless. In order to reduce the construction time to the greatest extent, the shipwright also went all out. Jean's order was quickly passed down. The people were also frightened by the earthquake and were even more enthusiastic about the work of building the ship. During the day, Jean even began to guard the empty space in the valley, personally supervising everyone's work. With Jean there, everyone felt at ease and no longer feared that the big guy would go crazy again. Everyone felt a strong pressure in their hearts, causing the efficiency of the new ship to increase by a large margin. In the following week, the big guy did not go crazy again. The earthquake also did not happen again, but the food consumption was very high. Everyone was really working hard. Many people took the initiative to continue working at night. They felt that they had too much time to sleep and rest. After all, the construction of the new ship was related to everyone's lives. Zhenjin personally supervised the construction site during the day. The masts were placed on the keel. The beams were set up, together with the frame. The prototype of the new ship could be seen. The construction of the sails was very fast, mainly because of the large amount of spider webs. Just as the shipwright had estimated, the spider webs of the blade spiders were very suitable to be one of the main materials for the sails. When the third side of the sails was built, the earthquake happened again. But the big guy did not go crazy. No one cared about this. In fact, Shi Suo had already pointed out the inaccuracy of the mad scientist's prediction in the propaganda of the ship's crew. This island was becoming more and more dangerous, and the people were most concerned about whether they could escape from here. They prayed that the earthquake would not happen again, but reality was the opposite of their expectations. In the following period of time, the earthquake not only became more frequent, but the scale of each one also became bigger. The wooden roof had to be reinforced many times, but in the end, it could not hold up anymore. Zhenjin could only order the people to move the prototype of the new ship outside the valley. The forest outside was completely cut down and burned, forming a new construction site. The new construction site was completely open, and there was no time to build a dock. In fact, because of the earthquake, the dock would also collapse and hit the prototype of the new ship. What was difficult was that other than the earthquake, there was also the rain. Humidity was the biggest enemy for ship construction. The hull of the ship especially needed to be dry, and the water in the wood needed to be removed. Zidi's medicine was very useful. In addition, the people dismantled the tents and assembled them. In the rainy weather, they built a giant tent and worked inside. When the weather cleared up, they dismantled the tent and let the prototype of the new ship dry under the sun, trying their best to remove the water inside. When the earthquake struck for the 8th time, everyone was shocked to see a pillar of lava shooting up into the sky as the earth shook and the mountain swayed. According to Tsang Su's estimation, Zhenjin and the others were at the edge of the island, and the volcano was at the center of the island, or even the center. From Zhenjin's position, he could see the spectacular scene of the volcano erupting. So the real scene of the volcano must be even more terrifying. It's the end of the world. Can we really escape from here? If this island sinks tomorrow, I won't be surprised. Everyone was anxious. Realizing this, Zhenjin held a bonfire banquet not long after. He gave a public speech, using his identity as a divine knight, the empire, glory, and achievements to boost everyone's morale. The speech had a clear effect. When the people saw Zhenjin, they once again realized that they had such a reliable leader by their side. Zhenjin was not only powerful, but also noble. He promised that he would not give up on anyone, and everyone believed his words. The smell of barbecued meat assailed their nostrils, and more than 10 bottles of rum were also provided. Everyone was given very little alcohol, but the wonderful taste was intoxicating. The nerves that had been tense all this time were now relieved, and the frowning eyebrows gradually relaxed, and the chatter and laughter increased. Zhenjin carried a large piece of barbecued meat to the bonfire in the corner. This was where the big guy and the shipwright were. Zhenjin handed the barbecued meat to the big guy. The big guy did not dare to take it, and only after being scolded by the shipwright did he timidly take it. "You have done very well these days. Without you, the ship would not have been built so quickly. Continue to work hard." Under everyone's gaze, Zhenjin encouraged the big guy. The big guy curled up his body, sitting in his seat. Seeing Zhenjin smile at him, he quickly lowered his head in embarrassment, staring at the barbecued meat in his hand, not knowing what to say. Zhenjin did not stay for long. After a while, he turned and left. When the shipwright respectfully sent him off, he sighed with emotion. "Sir, you are truly different from the others. I have never seen such a noble person like you." The old father sincerely thanked him. His voice choked, his eyes slightly red. Zhenjin patted his shoulder, looked around, and saw that everyone's attention was on him. He raised his voice. "Everyone has a place on this ship. No one will be left behind. In other words, we are all on the same boat. I know, There are differences between us. Differences in status, bloodline, appearance, personality, all kinds of differences. But these differences should not become the reason for our suspicion, opposition, and internal friction. We should be tightly united. Only this way can we maximize our chances of escaping. We are all on the same side. Jean Jun said the last sentence in a particularly emphatic tone. As expected, his impromptu speech once again won the cheers of the crowd. Many people found that they fell in love with Zhun Jin's speech and were very willing to listen to Zhun Jin speak a few more words. Zhun Jin's words comforted their panicked hearts, calmed them down, and filled them with hope and motivation again. ZD stared at the young leader. Song Su had an approving smile. Baiya's fanatical gaze seemed to be on fire, while Lan Zhao was silent and reserved. Heiwan quietly clenched his fist. Sandao, who had always been calm, was also a little dazed. On the same side, Zonga looked at the bonfire in front of him. These three words made him recall a scene from the past. He fell on the cold tiles, his head was firmly stepped on by a foot. On the same side, the youth who stepped on Zonggu said in a sharp voice, You actually said that you and we are on the same side? The young Zonggu struggled, but could not resist the strength of the youth in front of him. He forced himself to speak. We have the same blood flowing in our veins. We have the same father. We are brothers and sisters. Aren't we on the same side? As soon as he said that, Zonggu felt the strength of the foot stepping on his head increase. The luxurious boots even ground hard on Zongji's temple. Shut up, you bastard. The youth who stepped on him shouted angrily. The other youths who were watching also spoke up. Who is your brother and sister? You were born in dirty soil. How can you stand shoulder to shoulder with us? You do have a noble bloodline, but that is precisely your tragedy, because this shows the essence of your inferiority and incompetence. You are the disgrace of our family. You are a stain on our family's reputation. Bastard, a mere half-beastman wants to stand shoulder to shoulder with us. In your dreams. Chapter 147. Young Zonggu slowly opened his eyes. His blurred vision became clear. He saw the beautiful floor tiles. The pain in his body made his memory clear. He had been beaten up by his half-brothers and sisters and had fainted. Silent tears flowed from his eyes. Despair, anger, hatred, confusion, all kinds of emotions drowned young Zonggu. He curled up his body and sobbed softly. Footsteps suddenly came and finally stopped in front of Zonggu. Zonggu vaguely saw a pair of boots in his blurred vision due to tears. Sigh. The owner of the boots let out a deep sigh. Just a sigh was enough for Mangu to understand the identity of the person who had come. The next moment, he was pulled up by the person and stood up. Teacher, Zonggu called out helplessly. The teacher stared at him. He did not hug young Zonggu into his arms to comfort him, but handed him a sword. Continue to practice the sword. The teacher said. Huff, huff, huff. The middle-aged Zonggu spread his feet as wide as his shoulders. He held the wooden handle of the white bone hammer with both hands and kept making vertical and downward slashing movements. This was one of the most basic movements in swordsmanship. Zonggu did it meticulously. The huge and heavy bone hammer in his hands was as light as straw. What made the swordsman even more moved was that every movement he made was like a copy of the previous movement. No matter if it was the angle of the slashing, the speed, or the height of the bone hammer at the top and bottom, there was no change. After making 300 slashing movements like this, the powerful half-beast man was sweating all over. Many strands of his long brown hair were wet with sweat and stuck to his forehead. The banquet had already ended. There was no wind or moon in the middle of the night. Zonggu was standing at the edge of the temporary camp. Behind him was a bright bonfire, and in front of him was an endless, deep rainforest. Zhenjin said, one of our own. It made Zonggu remember the past. Under his silent and calm expression, there was an irritated heart. Every time this happened, Zhenjin would practice his swordsmanship. As long as it involved swordsmanship, Even a most basic downward slashing movement, it could attract his attention, making him focus all his attention and eliminate all the complicated thoughts. Zhong Ji's restless heart gradually calmed down. The boring swordsmanship movements, in his eyes, were almost entertainment. One of our own? It's just that the situation forced me to. Zhong Ji's heart. He put the bone hammer on the ground and sighed in his heart. But the next moment, his ears trembled slightly, and his face suddenly changed. Faintly, he seemed to hear a wolf's howl. The night passed. After receiving the information from Zhonggu, Jin personally led a team to investigate. 50,000 meters away from the edge of the valley, Jin Jun and the others found a large area of messy beast prints. There are the paw prints of a monkey-tailed brown bear, the hoof prints of a mighty white rhinoceros, and the snake tracks of a crocodile head hammertail centipede. It's definitely the magical beast army. Jin's head sank. He continued to investigate, and the results were more serious than he had expected. In the northwest and southwest of the small valley, there was 1 and 2 magical beast army. These 3 magical beast army were wandering around the edge of the controlled area of the small valley and did not go deep. When the intelligence was brought back, the higher-ups all had serious expressions. This means that there are at least 3 blue dog fox wolf eyeing our camp. Could it be that there is only 1 magical beast army, and the blue dog fox wolf is using a diversion tactic? No. The size of the army that attacked the camp before is basically the limit of a single blue dog fox wolf's control. The traces left by the beast horde are very different. Moreover, it is very difficult to make these magical beasts disguise their own traces. After all, the blue dog fox wolf is special. Since these magical beast army deliberately did not approach the valley, it means that they have already discovered us. They are not attacking now, so they must still be accumulating strength. It is very likely that the blue dog fox wolf that is tailing us, it must have called more of its companions. The situation had become very bad. Everyone had to build the ship while defending against the magical beast army's attack. With the blue dog fox wolf commanding the magical beast army, it was more than 10 times more powerful than a beast horde of the same size. What was worse was that the volcanic eruption was still ongoing, and the island seemed to be in the midst of some kind of drastic change. If the ship was completed too late, everyone might be buried with the island. The higher-ups discussed many ways to deal with it, and they were already experienced in dealing with a magical beast army. But no matter how ingenious the method was, someone had to carry it out. Once the manpower was transferred, the speed of building the ship would be reduced. This was something that no one wanted to see, but there was no other way. No, I have a way. This was what Jin wanted to say, but he did not say it out loud. The fortifications began to be built and reinforced. Everyone rested at night, and Jin began to move. After transforming into a bat monkey, he quickly moved forward in the rainforest. The ultrasound detected a magical beast army. The bat monkey Jin quickly flew higher into the sky. In the sky, he saw the blue dog fox wolf firmly in the center of the army, heavily protected. The next moment, Jin activated his heart core, and something strange happened. A red light flashed in the sky, and then the bat monkey form dissipated, replaced by the crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis Jin. The crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis Jin did not have wings or the ability to fly, and its body was fatter than a normal crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis. Jin directly fell from the sky. Naturally, there were also bat monkeys in the magical beast army. At first, the bat monkey needles did not alert them, but when such a large crocodile-headed and hammer-tailed bat monkey needles fell from the sky, the bat monkeys let out terrified screams. The blue dog fox wolf on the ground had just reacted when the crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis Jin smashed into the ground with a loud bang. Tall and thick trees were crushed by him, and a few unlucky magical beasts were crushed to death on the spot. The crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis's alligator skin displayed strong defensive power. However, this layer of skin alone was not enough. and under the skin was a thick layer of fat. Of course, the fat did not belong to the crocodile-headed hammer-tailed mantis, but to the underground sandworms. Junjin had naturally secretly transformed some of the underground sandworms after eliminating them. Although he could not transform into a complete form, the thick layer of fat was one of the options for him to transform. The fat trembled violently, counteracting the impact of the impact. The blue dog fox wolf jumped backward, and Junjin's figure suddenly rushed forward, quickly approaching the blue dog fox wolf. Then he suddenly stretched out his head, and the huge crocodile mouth opened. Like lightning, he suddenly attacked and bit the blue dog fox wolf. The blue dog fox wolf tried to howl, but at this time, a large amount of acid gushed out from Junjin's throat. The acid flowed backwards, and the blue dog fox wolf choked and coughed. It frantically scratched, and the hind legs that were left outside kept kicking. Unfortunately, at this time, Junjin had already raised the upper half of his snake body, so the blue dog fox wolf was suspended in the air, and its hind legs could not exert force. Then, a red light emerged from Junjin's mouth, forming 4 bloodlines, and tied up the blue dog fox wolf. The bloodlines sank, and the magical beast army launched a frenzied attack on Junjin. The fastest to move was not the monkey-tail brown bear or the strong white rhinoceros that were closest to Junjin, but the flying squirrels. A large number of flying squirrels. However, Junjin had already expected this. Although he was in the form of a crocodile head hammertail centipede, he released a silver-ranked bat monkey sound wave. When the flying squirrels were hit by the sound wave, they immediately fell to the ground and were no longer a threat. 2 strong white rhinoceroses charged over, and Junjin did not attempt to dodge. He was not familiar with the crocodile head hammertail centipede form, so even if he dodged, he might not be able to dodge. Therefore, he did not dodge, and instead turned his crocodile skin into a scorpion shell. The strong white rhinoceroses crashed into the scorpion shell. They did not break the shell, but a huge impact was transmitted over. The thick fat under the scorpion shell once again absorbed the impact, and the violent fluctuations quickly dispersed the impact, perfectly receiving it. At the same time, a red light flashed in Junjin's mouth, and the blue dog fox wolf was transformed and absorbed, turning into a pile of carbon powder. After killing the blue dog fox wolf, Junjin was greatly energized. Having the blue dog fox wolf or not was a completely different situation. The effects of the strange fragrance were still in effect. Seeing their commander killed, the magical beasts went into a frenzy and began to attack Junjin crazily. The other magical beasts were not so bad, but the brown monkey-tail bear's red claws were able to pierce through the scorpion shell, poking holes in Junjin's body. The fat under the scorpion was also roasted, and a delicious smell of food was emitted. Junjin rolled on the ground, crushing a path. With a flash of red light, the huge crocodile head hammertail centipede form dissipated, and he once again turned into a silver bat monkey and flew into the sky. All the bat monkeys chased after him, while the rest of the magical beasts could only stand on the ground and roar. Junjin flew high into the sky, and his speed was extremely fast. Only the 2 silverbat monkeys could barely keep up with him. Junjin turned around and began to attack the silverbat monkeys. He turned into a lizard's head, but it was a spider's mouth part. 2 balls of milky white spider webs shot out and hit the 2 silverbat monkeys, binding their wings. The silverbat monkeys screamed and fell to the ground. The rest of the bat monkeys reached out to help, catching their leader in the air. But this was Junjin's plan. He occupied the sky and continuously shot out spider webs, shooting down the bat monkeys one by one. Soon, the sky cleared, and only Junjin was left. Without the bat monkeys, Junjin began to use acid and continuously shot it out. The magical beasts could only roar and howl, but they could not do anything to Junjin. The normal beasts were killed by the acid, and the bronze and dark iron beasts were heavily injured. The battle went on for a long time, and Junjin's core mana reserves had decreased by more than half. The entire magical beast army was also exhausted from his torture. It's time. Zhen Jin saw the opportunity and flew down, turning into the brown monkey-tail bear form. He directly landed on a lethal white rhinoceros. The red bear claws directly pierced through the lethal white rhinoceros's head, and then the nails mutated, turning into spider blades and piercing through the lethal white rhinoceros's brain, and sharp beak tips emerged from its shin. Another lethal white rhinoceros charged over, and, at the same time, a crocodile-headed hammertail centipede behind Zhen Jin attacked. Zhen Jin instantly turned into the silver flying squirrel, and like lightning, he successfully dodged. The lethal white rhinoceros and the crocodile-headed hammertail centipede crashed into each other. Zhen Jin directly crashed into the chest of a brown monkey-tail bear, and before it could react, he exploded with a strong electric shock. Bang! The brown monkey-tail bear fell, and smoke rose from its body. It was not a lethal white rhinoceros, and after being killed by such an attack, there was no possibility of revival. However, this level of electric attack consumed the most mana. After that, Zhen Jin did not use this method. Even without electric attacks, he still caused chaos in the magical beast army. Without the blue dog, fox, and wolf, these magical beasts had limited intelligence and were easily manipulated by Zhen Jin without any concept of formation. In fact, many of their attacks landed on their companions. The most important change was that Zhen Jin had become stronger. All this time, he had been training hard and had accumulated a lot of results, and he had made great progress in many aspects. For example, before, Zhen Jin could not quickly change forms in the middle of a fierce battle. But now he was doing it very smoothly. Before fighting with this magical beast army, Zhen Jin lacked an opportunity to thoroughly test himself. Now this opportunity had come. Refreshing. Too refreshing. The more Zhen Jin fought, the more excited he became. In the beginning, when he used the various magical beast forms, there were still many areas where he was unfamiliar with, especially the transformation between the forms of the magical beasts. But in the fierce battle, he became more and more proficient and became calm. Many of the movements were not smooth when he was training hard on a daily basis. But in the fierce battle, in the siege, and under the external pressure, these movements became smoother and smoother. The connection of various movements and tactics also became natural. The quantitative change triggered a qualitative change, and Zhen Jin could feel that he was becoming stronger. In the next second, he was even stronger than in the previous second. A little stronger, a little stronger. Zhen Jin roared in his heart. Slow, too slow. He caught up with a monkey-tail brown bear, and the blade on the back of his hand flashed, and the monkey-tail brown bear's head was cut off. Weak, too weak. He stepped on the bat monkeys that were bound by the spider web one by one, and they were directly trampled to death on the spot. Corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed all over the ground. Zhen Jin fought against an army alone, and began a bloody and brutal massacre. The magical beast army was mostly lost, and the rest began to flee. Zhen Jin began a merciless pursuit. No demonic beast could escape his pursuit. When the last deadly white rhinoceros fell by the small lake, Zhen Jin could not help but raise his head and laugh wildly. Ha ha ha! The conflict, depression, and pressure of the past few days had all been vented and released in this battle. Behind his butt, the scorpion tail skillfully pierced through the body of the deadly white rhinoceros. Then, the blood threads entangled and absorbed the deadly white rhinoceros. So, I'm already so strong. What else can stop me? What else? Even if more magical beast army comes, what can they do to me? Zhen Jin raised his head and puffed out his chest, looking around arrogantly. The dark clouds dispersed, revealing the moonlight. At this moment, the vast rainforest was silent, as if awed by his ferocious might. Zhen Jin's gaze swept around, and he suddenly paused. He saw his reflection in the lake. At this moment, he had a scorpion tail, a lizard's head, scorpion shell, the body of a bear, and spider blades on the back of his hands. A monster! Jinjin was stunned. The joy in his heart and the surging battle intent in his heart receded like the tide. It was as if he had become a statue. A moment later, his body trembled slightly, and he seemed to have come to his senses. He slowly retreated until he could no longer see his reflection in the lake. Chapter 148. Shoot! Lon Zao roared at the top of his lungs. Swoosh! The next moment, the crossbows were fired in unison, forming a black curtain of arrows. Under the curtain of arrows, the bat monkeys fell to the ground one after another. On the hillside, the remaining large magical beasts were still trying to charge. A monkey-tailed brown bear rushed to the front. Bang! Suddenly, a huge crossbow arrow flew out like a war spear, carrying a strong wind, and hit the monkey-tailed brown bear in the blink of an eye. It pierced through the wound in its chest and came out of its body. The monkey-tailed brown bear was shot to death, and its body was also sent flying a short distance by the crossbow arrow. Well done, Heywan! Seeing this scene, the morale of the people around him was greatly boosted. The huge crossbow arrow was shot from a crossbow, and the person who shot it was Heywan. In terms of archery, he was recognized as the person second only to Junjin in the camp. Woof, woof, woof. At the rear of the magical beast army, several blue dog fox wolf barked together, and the magical beast army began to retreat. We did it. We won one victory, and we managed to hold this place. It's all thanks to Lord Jinjin and Lord Zongge. Everyone cheered, and almost everyone's eyes were focused on Jinjin and Zongge. It had been more than half a month since Zhang Jin's night attack and annihilated the entire magical beast army. In this half a month, the situation had rapidly deteriorated. Since Zhang Jin's first attack, the remaining blue dog fox wolf had chosen to gather in one place after realizing that the scattered magical beast army would be wiped out. This made it difficult for Jinjin to attack. After that, he tried many times to attack. He eliminated the blue dog fox wolf and slaughtered many magical beasts, but he was also tricked by the blue dog fox wolf, fell into a trap, was besieged, and was seriously injured. Fortunately, Zhang Jin's heart was no longer what it used to be. He could conjure the meat of the deadly white rhinoceros. This kind of rhinoceros meat is much more practical than other magical beast meat. After Jinjin turned the flesh of his wounds into rhinoceros meat, he gained the incomparable regenerative abilities of the life-enhancing white rhinoceros. Basically, there were no wounds left overnight. On the other hand, the deadly white rhinoceros needed to eat a huge amount of food to replenish its energy. Jinjin had the heart core, so he only consumed the mana within it. He consumed his mana to discharge electricity, and he also consumed his mana to heal himself. More and more, he realized the practicality of mana. This time, a new blue dog fox wolf has appeared. Zongge sighed as he returned triumphantly with Jinjin. The current situation was like this. Once a blue dog fox wolf was eliminated, a new one would soon appear, or even two. Every blue dog fox wolf had a magical beast army of varying sizes. Jinjin was silent. When he first discovered the magical beast army, he went all out, wanting to rely on his own efforts to directly resolve the crisis of the camp. At first, the situation was very good. He destroyed an entire magical beast army with his own strength. But the other two blue dog fox wolf that were wandering around the border quickly discovered the destruction of their companions and the army, and immediately gathered together. The two blue dog fox wolf stood side by side, which made it difficult for Jinjin to attack. He tried a surprise attack, but it failed. Only one blue dog fox wolf survived. After learning about Zhang Jin's information, the blue dog fox wolf once again made the right move. It ordered the flying squirrels to hide underground. These flying squirrels were originally good at digging holes in tree trunks and underground. After they hid deep underground, Zhang Jin's sound wave attacks were difficult to achieve. And when Jinjin began to attack, they received the blue dog fox wolf's orders. and these flying squirrels attacked in waves. No matter what Jinjin transformed into, he was not immune to electric shocks. Although he also had a thick white fascia to protect himself, these crystal membranes only protected his internal organs, brain, and so on. His muscles were basically not within the scope of protection. The numbness brought about by every electric shock would cause his movements to stop. This was very dangerous. The blue dog fox wolf was even more cunning. It never sent out all the flying squirrels at once. Instead, it counterattacked Jinjin in waves. Jinjin was seriously injured and retreated. Just as he wanted to attack again the next night and destroy the few remaining magical beast army, he discovered that the enemy had added 2 magical beast army. He and the magical beast army were in a stalemate. As more and more information about him was leaked, the blue dog fox wolf had more and more accurate responses to him. The blue dog fox wolf was very concerned about its own safety. Jinjin's decapitation strategy had failed repeatedly. Once, the blue dog fox wolf even used Jinjin's strategy to deliberately show a flaw. They used one of the blue dog fox wolf as bait to lure Jinjin into a tight encirclement. The rest of the blue dog fox wolf commanded them to surround Jinjin and hunt him down. Fortunately, Jinjin could fly and luckily escaped. But later, the new blue dog fox wolf brought along a group of blade spiders, which posed a huge threat to Jinjin. Jinjin could only fight at full strength in the middle of the night. After the magical beast army gained a foothold, they began to penetrate deep into the defensive zone and attack the valley. Jinjin could not do anything about it. He was fighting alone and could not stop the huge magical beast army's advance. If I cooperate with the others and transform completely, I might be able to kill all these magical beasts and the blue dog fox wolf, Jinjin thought. However, he immediately dispelled this thought. He would not do that unless he had no other choice. Even when he transformed into his human form, he was very restrained. Usually, he would only transform when he was in the middle of charge. Even if he transformed right in front of everyone, he would quickly rush into the group of beasts. Fortunately, ZD, Song-Su, and the others did not have the ability to fight. They were always at the back and did not have the chance to observe Jinjin's transformation at close range. And every time Jinjin prayed to the Shengming Emperor, the results were inconsistent. Everyone thought that this was a normal situation and did not have any more doubts. The upheaval might have happened a long time ago. Our hope lies in the new ship, Jinjin answered Zhonggu as he looked into the distance. The volcanic eruptions never stopped. Although there were intermittent, the eruptions were becoming more frequent. The sky in the distance was dark. It was all volcanic clouds. Although the sky above the rainforest was clear, the volcanic clouds were spreading in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. It looked like it was going to cover the entire island. Zhonggu also looked at the erupting lava pillars and nodded. After bidding farewell to Jinjin, the half-beast man continued to guard the defensive line. These days, he was mainly in charge of commanding the defensive battle. He was not an ordinary soldier. He had been a general and had considerable talent. Song-Su was in charge of logistics and had been praised by Zhonggu many times. Jinjin was mainly in charge of guarding the construction site. The higher-ups had a clear division of labor. In the open space of the small valley, more than half of the new ship's hull had been successfully built. A large number of shipboards were pieced together and installed on the frame. The shipboards used the advanced horizontal joining method, not the backward overlapping method. Most of the people working around the hull were injured. The defensive line needed combat power, so the injured provided labor. These days, they were very active in their work. Almost every day, they sweated like rain. Their wounds reopened, and every night, they were so tired that they fell asleep immediately. The situation was critical, and they could only escape with a new ship. This view had become everyone's consensus. In the open space, the most conspicuous person was the big guy. The big guy's labor was important, but he also had hidden dangers. Once he went crazy and the ship's hull was destroyed, everyone would lose hope of escaping. So, usually, Jinjin had to stay here. Once the big guy went crazy, he would act in time and knock him out. Jinjin would only appear there when the defensive line was tight. In the past half a month, there had been more than a dozen earthquakes and cries for sure. It was very frequent. The big guy had acted up nearly 10 times, but he was stopped in time by Jinjin. Every time the big guy acted up, everyone would move the ship along the sliding rails to the open space outside the valley, avoiding several earthquakes. No one found trouble with the big guy anymore. The huge external pressure from the magical beast army made the internal conflicts almost negligible. He dragged his tired body to the cave entrance. Under the light of the bonfire outside, he placed a parchment on his leg. He dipped the quill in ink. This small action made him grimace in pain. His arm was bandaged, and blood-red spots seeped through the bandage. He was injured in today's battle. The bat monkey bit his forearm. The hot and humid air made his clothes stick to his body. Only his stomach, which had eaten a full meal, transmitted happiness. He took a few breaths to calm his rapid breathing before he began to write the letter. Dear Miss Xier, please forgive me for writing to you again after so many days. Please also forgive me for not being able to deliver these letters to you. The magical beast army attacked again. I killed more than a dozen bat monkeys and injured many magical beasts. We thought that the magical beast army would not be a problem, but in fact, their reinforcements are endless. The situation seems to be getting worse. Today, another new magical beast army appeared. This made our previous week's intense battles and slaughtering efforts vanish into thin air. It is too easy to replenish the magical beast army. But fortunately, we have the valley. This terrain is far easier to defend than the camp. The most obvious point is that the crossbow can be placed at a high place. Lord Heywan's prestige has increased recently, because he is very good at controlling the crossbow. The power of the huge crossbow is very terrifying. It can often cause serious damage to silver magical beasts. Lord Zhonggu is even more admirable. Although he is a half-beastman, he has courage that is hard to come by. Although his left arm's gauntlet is damaged, he uses an iron shield to stand at the front line and personally block the attacks of the magical beasts. That huge shield is almost as tall as me and is very heavy. But Lord Zhonggu can easily lift it. And the one we worship the most is always the Lord Jinjin. Every time the defensive line is in danger, he always appears where he is needed the most. Every time he appears, he can immediately kill the magical beasts. Not only does he stabilize the defensive line, he also leads the charge. Every time we see his figure, our fearful and shaken hearts will quickly calm down, and our low morale will quickly rise. The Lord Jinjin is a believer of the Shengming Emperor and is deeply loved by the Emperor. He has brought us light and victory. With Lord here, we will definitely win. Dear Miss Xier, today's battle made me break out in a cold sweat. The blue dog fox wolf has clearly probed our defensive line, and they have planned an extremely treacherous sneak attack. All of the strong white rhinoceroses were gathered together and charged on the slope. Our defensive line was directly destroyed. Seeing that the other magical beasts were about to pass through the gap in our defensive line, the Lord Jinjin appeared. I will never forget this scene. After the Lord Jinjin prayed loudly, another miracle appeared. He turned into a giant that was even bigger than the Zhonggu. He wore a golden armor and had unparalleled strength. The strong white rhinoceroses were unable to harm him. After he prayed loudly, the Shengming Emperor granted him a sharp sword that was hard to block. The sword flashed with lightning and was tightly held in his hand. The strong white rhinoceroses' heads were pierced, and their brains were fried by the lightning. Wherever the Lord Jinjin went, the magical beasts were thrown off their feet and scattered. He then charged down the slope, scaring the blue dog fox wolf into running away. Although we won, this battle made people afraid. If it wasn't for the Lord Jinjin, we would have been defeated. Therefore, after a discussion between the Lord Jinjin, Zhonggu, Songsu, ZD, and the other lords, they decided to build more ballistae and crossbows. They also transferred more manpower to garrison the area. If we do this, the speed of the new ships will be slowed down. But there is no other way. The big guy is also a hidden danger. I told you in the previous letter that he has a disease. Someone suggested that the big guy be in charge of the defensive line because many people, including me, are worried. If the Lord Jinjin goes to the front line one day, the big guy will suddenly get sick and destroy the new ships. That would be terrible. But Scholar Tsang Su has calculated and told us that the big guy's labor is equivalent to 50 people. He is even a skilled shipbuilder. He looks clumsy, but he is actually very skilled. This is related to the fact that he grew up on a ship and was taught by shipbuilders, which allowed him to participate in the repair of ships. The big guy plays an important role in the shipbuilding process. If he is sent to fight, the efficiency of the shipbuilding will be reduced to the bottom. Scholar Tsang Su's words can't convince everyone. Of course, I believe in Scholar Tsang Su. After the Lord Jinjin expressed his support for Tsang Su, no one had any objections. Baya put away the letter he had written. Bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down his face. His face was pale. The fierce battle gave him no time to recover and rest. Dear Miss Shiyu, today is another fierce battle. The magical beast army's attacks are becoming more frequent and more fierce. I feel numb. I'm not talking about the numbness in my heart. In fact, as long as the Lord Jinjin is here, my heart will always be filled with hope and fighting spirit. When I say numb, I am referring to my body. I am sick. Maybe it is the accumulation of old and new injuries that are dragging me down. Or maybe it is some kind of poison left in my wounds after being bitten by a beast. My vision is turning black. When I turn my head quickly, the world spins, and I even see the illusion of a mountain falling down on me. I have lost my sense of touch. I am holding the crossbow, but my fingers can't feel the bowstring or the trigger. My tongue is also numb. I have no sense of taste. ZD gave me some medicine. Every time I drink a tube, I feel better for half a day. But after half a day, my body feels like it is in an oven. It is as if my body can't control my soul. I feel like my soul is about to scatter. I don't know if I will be able to get through this. But I promise you, I have never been weak since I met with this disaster. I have always done my best to fight. I imitate the actions of the Lord Jinjin. I really want to have the same strength as him. Unfortunately, I'm just an ordinary person. If I'm unable to get through this and lose my life here. I beg you, for the sake of these letters, take care of my old parents on the mountain. Tell them of my death and ask them to forgive me, this unfilial son. Let me be an example to my younger brother and sister, so that they can learn from it. I have to admit, after I smelled the scent of death, I regretted it. But I will never regret knowing you, my beautiful, most beloved Miss Shiyu. Your smile has always been engraved in my heart. But please forgive me. My abilities are too limited. At this point, the tip of Baya's brush paused. Then, with her drooping hand, the tip of the brush swiped across more than half of the parchment before falling to the ground. With a bang, Baya fell to the ground. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.